interview with Arthur Petersen from Petersen Games. Come on back after the break. Hey everybody, there's just a quick little edit for the video, just a couple little notes I want to make before you watch this video. This is the first time I've ever done an interview, and there's a couple different issues with this video. I just want to explain what those are so you understand what's going to happen, because you're probably going to have to adjust your volume. Normally, when I make my videos, I have really high quality audio and visual, and this is one of those rare instances where the audio is not going to be perfect. I will explain exactly what happened. I've never actually used OBS for video editing or for using interviews or anything like that before. And I thought I was doing a lot of the right things. I had multiple audio tracks coming in, and I was trying to do everything to have it so I can have separate audio tracks to edit things in the end. Unfortunately, what I somehow managed to do is I managed to make multiple audio tracks. One audio track has the audio coming through from Arthur, where all the sounds like there's an extremely loud hum in the background. The other audio track is completely silent. There's no audio in it at all. So what you are actually going to be hearing is the audio that comes from my lapel mic. Now my lapel mic is picking up my audio very, very well. Unfortunately, it's also picking up the audio that's coming from the laptop that I'm using to record the interview. So Arthur's soundtrack is really faint while my sound is going to sound really loud. So what I had to do in there is go in there manually and lower everything I say volume-wise, bring down a whole bunch of decibels. Then I had to go in there and take everything that Arthur says and bring it up into much higher decibels. You need to understand that this was about a 6.5 hour conversation between Arthur and myself that's condensed down to about a little over 2 hours. And it's 2 hours without quick cuts. And I basically want to keep the feel and the strong strength of the interview itself. So I didn't go through and edit out any of the minor pauses, because I think the pauses can help you see how the conversation is going. I think it's going to be very important to see that, and you can enjoy the conversation that way. So I just want to give you a quick heads up. Basically, what you're going to have to do is turn up the volume a little bit. Normally, most of the times for my videos, the volume can usually run about 20% of your media producer's volume levels to have a nice, good clarity on this one. You probably want to bump it up to about 50. Now, like I said, I went through and evened out all the audio the best that I can, but it's very painstaking to the point where I actually had to take the audio track itself and perfectly sync it up with the mouth movements perfectly. So there may be some times where the mouth and the audio is not perfectly synced up. Now, there's also some things that we talked about that I was pretty much sworn to secrecy on, but I think these are things that a lot of you are going to be extremely excited about. And I think some of you are going to say to yourself finally that the wait is definitely going to be worth it, especially for the things I've seen. They're going to make a lot of people very, very happy. So enjoy the video. If you have any comments, questions, make sure to leave them down below. And don't forget, if this is something and this is something you want to see more of, I do have a plan to actually interview Sandy and Arthur together in the future. But that's going to require you to give me some feedback. Did you enjoy this video? Are there things you enjoyed here? Do you want to see more of these videos? And most importantly, leave your questions down below on things that you would actually like me to see me ask Arthur and Sandy together. Thanks a lot. Go ahead and enjoy the video. My name is Michael, Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. Been doing videos for about 9 years for the board gaming hobby. And if you'd like to introduce yourself here, Arthur, it'd be awesome if you can do so.
My name's Arthur. I am the project director at Petersen Games. A lot of you probably know me because I write all the Kickstarter updates if you're a Kickstarter backer. I don't know what else to say.
So, what did you do before you started working for Petersen Games?
I taught high school English.
Interesting. How long did you do that for?
Yeah, I did that for 4 years. So I was in the Dallas area. I lived in Garland, Texas, and I would commute to Sunset High School in South Dallas. 96% Hispanic student population.
Wow.
And but so there was a lot of, I didn't do ESL or anything, I was just teaching English. But yeah, it was a very awesome time. So I was there at Sunset High School for 3 years, and then I moved to, I didn't move, but I shifted schools to Naaman Forest, and just a different high school. And then I got a call from Sandy for an interview to work at Petersen Games, and the rest is history.
And when was that you started working for Petersen Games?
June 2014.
Wow, 2014. So 8 years now, right?
Yeah, or 9, or...
Well,
yeah, 8.
8 years.
8 years.
And during that time, you've worn multiple hats. What kind of hats have you worn since you worked there?
I think every possible hat. So I've overseen shipping, customer service, manufacturing, development of games, overseeing art teams, overseeing design teams, overseeing editing teams, done editing. I've been involved in the design of some games, even though I'm not officially a game designer. I've involved in playtesting, running playtesting, feedback from playtesting. Honestly, if there's a part of the marketing, conventions, going to conventions, talking to suppliers, talking to sellers, retailers, distributors, I mean, if it's part of being a board game publisher, I've done it. Everything. Now, most of those things I'm mentioning, I might have worn that hat, but maybe not. That was my official job title or anything. But I've been involved in all of it. It's with a small company, with a small team, part of it is everybody has to have their hand in the pot, so to speak, on all these responsibilities, and that's part of why I've been involved. Also, my key role as just kind of being the project director, kind of having to oversee all sorts of things is part of it. So.
Now, you say you've never been a game designer, but you actually have a few games that you have worked on. What games are those?
So I designed the Tooth Fairy game, which was a bomb.
Well, what kind of game was it for people who don't know?
It was a kids game. It was our attempt. It was our lackluster attempt to break into the HABA market, so to speak. If you I don't know if you know
Yes.
what HABA is.
I actually, if I were to swing around, I actually own a couple of HABA games, such as Adventureland, HABA is an interesting company. They make kids games, but they make kid games that adults can enjoy, which is an amazing manufacturing experience, because a lot of companies can't say that, because you have your kid games where an adult says, "Dear God, please don't make me play this game again with my child." But you never feel that with HABA games. They have a way to design.
Absolutely. So and that was what you did was hit on the head of kind of our goal with doing, or my goal with doing the Tooth Fairy game. So I have 4 children, 4 daughters, and we have in my game library upstairs. You see my real library, book library here, but my board game library is upstairs, and I have a series of HABA games. And while I definitely wouldn't play them with gaming buddies and game night with adults, I mean, I play them with my kids, and a lot of them are very fun to play with your kids, like Spinderella.
Yes.
That's our go-to. I love Spinderella.
Yes.
It's a very fun little game to play with kids. And excuse me. And there's others. So with for those who don't know, this is a game publisher for obviously kids and family games based in Germany. They have great games, and so I wanted to make. What happened was I actually made it up to play with my kids. Nothing to do with publishing. It was just a game I made up. This little game that was using objects that read the rule book if you don't know how it plays. But basically, I made up this little game to play with my daughters. And we played it at home, and it was very fun. They loved it. And this is when they were very little. I'm talking like, my oldest was probably 4 or 5.
So this is about 7 years ago then, right?
Yeah, it's a long time ago. This is like I had been working for Petersen Games for a few years perhaps. And I was no longer a teacher, and it was just like at home I did this for fun, for my kids. And they loved it. And then their friends in the neighborhood loved it. And for years, as they got older, they would play it with friends. It was like our little game we made up and played. And then flash forward a few years, it was like, well, everybody, my kids got older, they still liked it. They would introduce it to their new school friends. And it was like, oh, maybe I should publish this, right? And so I approached Sandy and I showed him how it worked. And the theme wasn't tooths at first. It was just no theme, really. It's an abstract game. And so we applied the idea of these are little tooths that you're playing with. So it's the Tooth Fairy game, because that's a kid's thing. And that was the start of it. And then what happened was we said, okay, let's give people more bang for their buck. We're going to do 4 games in one that all use the same game pieces. And so it was the baby tooth game, the adult tooth game, and then I think the false tooth game and the gold tooth game.
See, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so like different levels, and each game, they also had different titles, but those were like how we kind of wrote them on the back. And so each one is a success, like teeth. Baby teeth is for like all ages, for kids. Adult teeth isn't for adults per se, but the rules are a little bit harder. Um, you know, gold teeth or false teeth, I can't remember the order, is like, you got to play with like 6 and 7 year olds, right? But the first game you can play with like 4 year olds, 3 year olds.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Really simple, yeah. And so even though the teeth, I'm going up into like false teeth, like
That's the game you play with the 80-year-old grandparents, right?
actually, it's just in the context of the game, it's like, okay, 8 year olds can play that one, right? And maybe a 5 year old wouldn't play that one as well. So it is for kids. It is a family game, but there's four games using the same pieces with different rules and admittedly different levels of quality. I mean, the first one I think is the best game, but there's four games in the box. It's a small little product, and it totally bombed. And I think, looking back, the easiest story we tell ourselves as to why it was a failure is because everybody, our entire audience, our marketing, our newsletter, our fan base, is all geared towards things like that behind you.
Yes,
right?
very, very true. You have your fan base.
Strategy games, this kind of thing. And it's like, we randomly do a Haba style game. I should have instead tried to find Haba at a convention and talk to them and pitched it to them, because they would probably do well with it. Or maybe it's just a bad game. I don't know. But basically, we did kind of try to market it, but I don't think we understood how to sell, how to bring the awareness into the right audience, and to market it to them, to find them, to market it to them. And I think that's the main reason it didn't do well.
That's a true challenge. It really is a challenge because, we have certain companies, like just picking one at random, Fantasy Flight Games. If I say Fantasy Flight Games, you think of a certain game style, right? If I talk of Haba, you think of a certain game style because that's what Haba does. That's what they produce. You talk about Petersen Games, you think, the first thing I think when somebody says Petersen Games is highly asymmetric strategy games with high player interaction. And one thing I have to thank your company for is the fact that you appreciate larger player counts. One of my biggest things that I always have as a problem as a board gamer, I do this video channel as a hobby for fun, but as a board gamer, my gaming group is 5+ people. A lot of board games stop at 4 people or less. So there's a lot of board games that I have dust collectors. You can see a little of my collection in the background, but there's some games on the shelves back there that are little dust collectors. Like Aftermath, it's pretty much a solo game for me because I have 5 friends. And I'm not the person who's going to say, hey, Bob, you can't come over this week because, we're going to play this 4-player game or anything like that. So that's something I've always appreciated from you guys is that you guys, when I think about you, it's asymmetric, lots of strategy, lots of player interaction, and the ability that I can get it to my board gaming table.
Yeah. Those are all things that I've heard Sandy on more than one occasion say they're explicit goals he's trying to accomplish with, such and such game he's working on. So, yeah. We talk a lot about those kinds of features at the outset of a game project. We're like, okay, who can play this game? And really the idea, but to go back to the Tooth Fairy, the idea was we wanted to break into that market. We failed at doing so. I don't think we put enough effort into it or bandwidth because we just couldn't at the time. But the idea was that we would have a separate, so we would have Petersen, because we understood everyone thinks of Cthulhu Wars and all the characteristics you were talking about with our games. We knew that this wouldn't go over, which is why we created like a sub-brand called Larva Games. Because our logo, of course, is the mantis.
Right.
And in this case, eating me. My brother came up with that gag.
See,
once.
I never knew that was actually you there. So.
Yeah. Well, it's not me. It's just a guy.
Right.
What we did was we had the gag where we took a picture of me and then shrunk it down for the business card. But I'm not the original guy in the image.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. This gag came after. So Lincoln came up with that. But anyway, but that's our logo, right? A giant mantis eating the person. So larvae insects have larvae. So the family/kids games is imprint of Petersen Games, brand, so to speak, was going to be Larva Games. It's essentially more of an aborted game line now because we don't really do anything with it, but we released Tooth Fairy Games under that banner, and we released Marry the Monster, I think, my other game under it. And a few others. We were gonna do like a whole series of family-friendly games, but yeah, right now that is all on hold.
Didn't 2 Minute Dino Deal also fall under that?
But what?
I'm sorry, didn't 2 Minute Dino Deal fall under that too, or was that part of Petersen?
Yeah, there was a transition period where we might have been putting both logos on it, or just Petersen Games logos, even if it was actually Larva Games. Legally, it was never a separate entity. It's a branding thing only.
What you got to do?
Larva Games is Petersen Games, but yeah, we had like a whole separate website for it briefly, and I don't know. It's something I do want to go back to because I love games, and once Petersen Games is in a better position to start releasing more games than it is now, we went through a phase where we were releasing more and more games. Now we've kind of shrunk down, and we're releasing games slower. Once we're more in a growth phase, I'll say, at some point down the road, I want to go do that again because, I mean, I have kids. They like all sorts of games. As they get older, they like games I like. But I mean, I have a 5-year-old still,
That's highly important. I mean, that was actually one of the first things that made me start my YouTube channel many, many years ago. I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years. And when I first started doing my reviews, the first thing I actually included was family friendliness in every single one of my reviews, because to me, that was something that was really important. Because 9 years ago, my kids were 5 and 8 years old, and they were starting to get into board games. They were starting to like board games. And, me being a board gamer, my kids weren't playing Sorry, they were playing Caverna. Because, I'm a board gamer, and they're like going, oh, Dad, this is like Minecraft. I'm like, yeah, like Minecraft. So, I mean, I get it. So making games for families is an important thing because that's a wonderful thing to do. So you also made Marry the Monster. Do you want to talk about that for a few?
Sure. I made Marry the Monster. Okay, so the story on this is really odd and hopefully funny and hopefully entertaining. So here's the genesis of Marry the Monster. So let me preface this by saying one thing that I think we're known for, and that I think Sandy strives to do with his games, is to really carefully marry, pun intended, the theme and the mechanics, right?
Right.
So you have, in Cthulhu Wars, it's a great asymmetric strategy game, but it's dripping with Lovecraftian theme, right? I mean, as much as it can.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt about it.
Right, and that's the same with Planet Apocalypse, where it's dripping with this interesting theme about demons taking over the Earth, with some scrappy survivors fighting back. The mechanics are there, but the theme is not a coat of paint on top. It is integrated into the DNA of how the game works. That's how our games generally work, right? It's not to criticize other designers or game companies, but there are lots of games out there where the theme is clearly just painted on after the fact.
Reiner Knizia to be an example?
What?
Reiner Knizia is a really good example. Yes.
His games can often be very fun, but the themes are literally interchangeable. Doesn't matter what the theme is, right?
Very true.
Yeah. And so it doesn't mean his games aren't fun or worth playing. I'm a big fan of what's it called? Modern art. And actually, the theme of that is very awesome. But you could change the theme, and the game would still work. You could change the theme for any number of other things. But the way they use the theme is pretty clever and funny because they have hilarious modern art thing. I'm not really an art guy, but fake paintings in the context of the game.
Right.
Lines and art. And it's like ridiculous modern art stuff. It's like stupid,
It keeps it entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's art, art aficionados out there that'll be like, no, modern art's awesome, right? But these are like abstract paintings that are like Jackson Pollock stuff, which to me is not interesting. I know he's famous. It's not my thing.
No.
Yeah, nothing against people who like that, but it's clever how they use that, right? So it's not, his themes can be good, but he clearly doesn't marry the mechanics and the theme. He comes up with the cool idea, and I think he openly says this. He has some pretty cool posts out there I've read of his, where he talks about how he develops his mechanics over time and refines them. then he slaps on the theme.
I actually read it. I read a development blog from him one time. This was years ago, so I don't know how valid it is anymore. Where he said what he does for some companies is he just does the mechanics only, and then he ships the mechanics off to the company, and they paint the theme onto the game. And he actually tells a story one time of where he actually played a game that he didn't realize it was one of his designs because he just sent them the mechanics. He sat down to play the game. He's like going, "This looks kind of familiar all of a sudden." So
That's very funny. Yes. So Sandy, and look, a lot of his games are really great. Like I said, I love modern art. If I'm not mistaken, he also did Revolution, which I like. Um, it has some interesting bidding, or not bidding things, but
auction.
It has some interesting elements of hidden information that are pretty clever. Anyway, so Sandy, what he does well in his process is to marry the theme and the mechanics. And so, that's the preface. Now to get back to Marry the Monster. My brother Grant, who is nothing to do with Petersen Games, he's a Petersen. He's a pharmacist in New Mexico. But in any case, he's a gamer like all of us. And he's more on the role-playing side. Like, he loves role-playing. And he and I are always talking about role-playing or fantasy worlds, fun stuff like that. We have our own little fantasy worlds we talk about and mine's called Arthuria. It's not like a real fantasy, it's not like a public fantasy world. It's just, people who like that kind of thing sometimes make up that kind of thing, right? So I've ran role-playing games for my kids and my wife and friends,
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you were a role player then. You play role-playing games.
I'm totally a role player.
Cool.
Well, Cthulhu Wars, remember Sandy wrote Call of Cthulhu back.
Right.
And Cthulhu, when he made Cthulhu Wars, he wanted these miniatures to be 28 millimeter scale. 28 millimeter scale, which means from a human, from heel to eyes, is like 6 feet if it's 28 millimeters.
Right.
Right? If the figure is. So that's the idea behind it, as I understand it. So he made them all be 28 millimeter scale for Cthulhu Wars. He wanted to, of course, a lot of them are giant monsters, so they're much bigger than humans. But he made it in that scale so it could be easily used for Call of Cthulhu role-playing, right? So anyway, I role-play. I'm more of a board gamer than a role-player, but I've played in lots of role-playing games in my life. When I lived in Texas, Sandy ran a campaign spanning 20 years that I was in.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and then I'm still technically part of that group. We meet a lot more sporadically, and now that I'm out of state, we meet by Zoom or similar on every other Saturday. I miss a fair amount of them now, actually, but I'm still kind of part of that group. Sandy also plays new, unfinished future games he's making with them sometimes, if we're not doing role-playing. But anyway, so long story short, yeah, Grant and I, we talk about the kinds of things nerds like us talk about, fantasy worlds and whatnot.
Right.
One time we were talking about this semi-obscure Celtic monster called the Fakan. Now the Fakan, in the mythology of either Ireland or Scotland, I can't remember, somewhere in the British Isles. His thing is that he has one eye, one arm, one leg, one of everything, right? And he carries one of each weapon. He's like a giant that hops around and eats your apples in your apple orchard, right? He's like a fairy monster. So, but he's big and he has one of everything. So we were talking about this for some reason one day, and we're talking about how there must be one of him. His whole thing is that there's one.
Right. Does that make sense?
He's not a race of. In D&D, he's in D&D bestiaries and all sorts of role-playing bestiaries and stuff. But he's usually like a race of beings or something, right? But it's like, no, it makes sense that there's one Fakan. He's lone. He's unique. And so we were talking about this, and this was at a time I think my brother was engaged, and we were talking. So I guess he was thinking about romance or something. And it was like he wants a mate. He's alone, and there is no mate for him. He can't have a family. How sad and tragic. So we were talking about this, and for some reason we started doodling on like a thing about like how to make a game out of it. Like he's looking for his mate, and is one player the facon and the other and what? And eventually it came out to like a thing where people were like making false like fake brides for him and using them to like attack somebody else. I mean I can't remember all the details, but it was like us being silly and random talking about this for an hour or two, and we developed this little teeny idea of a game. That was years ago. Flash forward to 3 or 4 years ago, and I said, hey, I'm going to turn this into a real game. So I kind of took the idea and developed it. And that's why the theme is so goofy and weird. If you read the back of the box, and it's like, there's one facon, and you are all trying to have him marry a fake bride because there is only one of him. And in doing so, he will destroy your opponent's buildings. It's really crazy stuff, right? Crazy for a game theme. So I wanted.
It's unique.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that the mechanics felt like that's the story, right? That you are tricking the facon into rampaging towards you, where you have this bride that he falls in love with, but in doing so, he's stomping on the buildings of your enemies. So this is a bizarre theme, but I'm not going to be stopped by things that are bizarre. I like bizarre. So I got where I could with it. I couldn't do it. I had a full-time job, of course, at Petersen Games, but in my weekends and other times, I would fiddle around with it and play it with my daughters and my wife and friends, and eventually got to a point where I'm like, I think I have something. I showed it to Sandy, showed it to other relevant people at Petersen Games, and they're like, yeah, we could do something with this. Now, Sandy and Lincoln didn't have time to fully flesh it out. I certainly didn't have a game that was ready to publish. But we found a freelancer named Zoran Dobrijevic, who's an amazing developer. He took my game, he refined the rules, and he turned it into the current version. And then we slapped on art, and we printed it and sold it to a few people. And here's the awesome thing. Here's the awesome thing, Michael. The biggest review website, or one of the biggest, is Dice Tower.
Right.
They generally don't like our games. This is how I know they're wrong about their opinions about games.
Oh, I have some opinions about the review about Cthulhu Wars, if we'd ever go on a little tangent here.
Yeah. So Cthulhu Wars, well, what's funny is in that, if I recall that, because that came out years ago.
Right.
The main guy was like, kind of semi-criticizing it, mostly like about the price, which granted it's not a cheap game.
Right.
But I would argue you get what you pay for. It's a quality game, and it bears that out in most of our fan base. On average, I think buys 11 expansions. So people, that's the average. Yeah. That's not. We have a small group of fans who buy our expansions. The average of every person who owns Cthulhu Wars, it's like 11 expansions. So, which means there's a lot, there's like, I don't even know, 50 expansions possible. There's some people who buy everything. And there's, of course, some people who buy 1 expansion or 0 expansions. But the average is 11, which implies the game is so good, you want even more than the base game. Or it implies the base game sucks unless you have the expansions, but I don't think that's the case.
I would argue that it's an amazing design choice and an amazing design just to show that you have a game that has 11 factions that
Right.
can be as asymmetric as they are and still play on a board and still play pretty darn well.
Yeah. Well, to throw a teeny bit of shade at another game, there's some games Cthulhu Wars has been compared to.
Chaos in the Old World, Root.
And Root, although Root it's less different than Root, but yeah, also Root. But here's I love Blood Rage. I backed it. I have it. Chaos in the Old World. I really loved that game before Cthulhu Wars was published because I think it's better. But I'm biased, admittedly. But here's the thing. I think of Cthulhu Wars as having such a powerful game engine in terms of its rule set and mechanics, so elegant in how it works, that Cthulhu Wars can have almost endless expansions added that will seamlessly fit and be enjoyable. That's why if you go to Board Game Geek and you go to the variants thread on Cthulhu Wars, you will see a billion, trillion, zillion variants for Cthulhu Wars. And these variants are not, let's modify the core game. None of them are that. They are all, here's my fun special faction based on some anime thing I like, or some wacky theme, or
Now,
just they're alternate expansions, new expansions. They're fan-made expansions because the game engine is so powerful. It allows for endless ideas to be applied to it.
now one of those factions has officially become almost official, right? Which is the Planet Apocalypse faction.
Exactly. Shout out to Matthew Folger.
Yeah, I want to make sure that was done because that's phenomenal design.
Designed an Egyptian, I think, Anubis.
Yes.
Like an Egyptian-based faction. It was really awesome. We liked it so much. We were like, let's publish this. There's a whole story there to that, but at the end of the day, it was, we love this faction, we want to make it official. There's another faction by, another shout out to Adam Starks. He made a brilliant, I'm pretty sure it's him, who made, so if I'm saying the wrong person, don't get mad at me. I think it was the Worm Behemoth or Destroyer or something, I don't know. It's something based on Brian Lumley's Chthonians.
Interesting.
We tried 4 times to get the license to do Chthonians and Brian Lumley. No every time. We're done asking. And so that's the one non-public domain but still important IP that we don't have for Cthulhu Wars. Brian Lumley's Chthonians. Anyway, so he made a fan-made variant based on Shoot Mel and the Chthonians, and it's really good, and we want to publish it as a faction. But we don't have the rights, and we're not going to do for Cthulhu Wars. We're not going to do, like the thing where this is Godzilla, but it's not Godzilla. It's
Right. It ruins it.
Everything else in Cthulhu Wars is the Cthulhu thing from the original stories, plus things that Sandy himself made up, whether in the Call of Cthulhu days or like Gobogag now. But other than that, it's like all from source material. So we're not going to make something up that's from the source material but with a different name, because that's, we don't want to do that.
Right.
So sadly, that will never see the light of the day. But to get back to my point, you have so much fan variance because the game can handle that because it's such a good game and rule set. And, to throw just a little bit of shade, because again, I am fans of these games and their designer. You don't have that with a lot of other similar games. I mean, you have variants and stuff, but it's not as comprehensive, it's not as endless, right? Because they just don't have the engine built for that like Cthulhu Wars does.
I would say I've been in the hobby for many, many 30 years. But I've been in the hobby for a long time, and I would probably say, aside from Root, which actually a game I'm not a huge fan of, I actually have said some semi-negative things about it in the past. But aside from Root, I would say there's not many games that have had that much of a fan base that's established their own personal factions and expansions for it. I think Root would probably be the only game I've seen that's actually had that much from the player community.
Yeah, I would say for Root that actually I'm not familiar with anything beyond just the game, the first game, the core game. But the 4 factions, and they had 4, right? 4 factions in that, or
4 base factions. I think they're up to 12 or something like that.
Oh, okay, I only know the 4. But those 4 players are very different. More different than Cthulhu Wars factions.
I would say kind of broken, but I don't want to go on. I don't want to make this me, dogpiling on Root, because most people know my opinions on Root. So
I haven't played Root enough to say much about it, other than the only thing I will say is I think that it is more asymmetric than Cthulhu Wars.
yes,
Which isn't good or bad. It just is what it is.
yeah, because it's a programming game. It's a solo. Depending on the fact you have a programming game, you have a solo faction, you have an engine building faction, and then you have like a commerce style faction kind of thing. So actually, that's probably a bad description. I'm sure people make fun of me because YouTube comments down below.
Well, yeah, and Root's a great game. I like Root. I own Root. I mean, nothing. I'm not throwing shade on Root actually at all. Root's great, very asymmetric. It's a different game.
It is.
Wars, Cthulhu Wars has the endless possible variants, not just because of the asymmetry, but just the core rule set. Because the variants can be new factions, but they can do all sorts of things. And back when, I remember when I was growing up, expansions for board games were pretty rare. you would have like one expansion, and most people, the idea was, when I was in high school, mostly we would never bother with expansions, right? It's
Avalon Hill. Classic Avalon Hill days, classic Hasbro days, yes.
Yeah, you might have an expansion, but it usually added more rules, but not more fun, right? And if you add more rules but not more fun, why do it? So, but nowadays expansions are a lot more common, and if you have the right game, a lot of expansion can be good. Not every game needs expansions, obviously. It just depends. Um, my Marry the Monster game. To kind of get back to actually what we were talking about. No expansions ever planned or ever needed because it's a self-contained thing. Um, and yes, I designed it. And again, that question came from your wearing hats thing. So yes, I have designed 2 games, and some other games unpublished that may or may not see the light of day. I will tell you the name of one, because the name of this game was a throwaway joke of a name for a game that Sandy once said, and I was like, I want to do that game! And it's Tanks vs. Mummies. So I've designed a 2-player asymmetric game. Well, I half designed it, which one player plays tanks and the other player plays mummies.
You know what I'm getting a vision of is that movie that came out, The Mummy, with, gosh, I forget the actor's name. I've never been a great when it comes to actors' names.
Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser, yes. We're getting visions of that one, which was, that classic scene with the whole desert storm that just moves in while they're looking at it and just realizing how their fate is like, oh, we're in trouble now.
That was not a bad movie.
No, it was good.
I'm a huge fan of the classic Universal monsters. I love the Mummy series. The first one is my favorite, although I have to admit, there's a part of me that loves Caris as well. So Imhotep with, what's his name? Boris Karloff playing Imhotep, where he's a magical mummy, and he's like the guy says, if I could reach you, I would crush your brittle bones. It's clear he's not the idea of the strong, unstoppable Gollum-like mummy. He's like a magical mummy, which is also what they used for the Brendan Fraser thing. He was like a magician mummy.
Yes.
Which I think is a cool idea. Whereas so that was the very first Universal mummy movie had that kind of mummy, where actually he does the Darth Vader thing. He kills a guy from a distance by choking him, exactly like Darth Vader. That's where it comes from, actually. Not Darth Vader. George Lucas did not invent that idea. So anyway, then they did a bunch of other mummy movies with Caris, who was more of the Gollum, unspeaking monster. I also like those though, right? I like all of them. So my idea for Tanks vs. Mummies is it's World War II, and the tanks are a British tank platoon or something that is in North Africa, in Egypt, right? And there's no, they think they're going to the story is they're going to a place where they think there's Rommel or whatever. There's Germans or Italians that are going to go fight. But what has happened is, Hitler has gotten, there's the whole, what is it, like esoteric secrets, magical history stuff with Hitler.
Right.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. The belief that he was into the occultism and the stuff like that.
Occultism thing, right?
Yes.
Which there's a bunch of obscure horror movies with that kind of angle, which I'm fond of. But like The Devil's Rock is an example. But anyway, the occult angle. And
right.
Look, I mean, I don't know the real history of any of that. If Hitler was into the occult or not, I don't care. But the point is, so we're pretending that is true, and that these guys have used occult magic to awaken a bunch of mummies in Egypt, and they are sending them to fight the British tank platoon. So one side is the mummies, and just mummies, no Germans or anything. They just like sent them off, and then the other side is the British tank platoon. So anyway, that's an unfinished game. I hope no one steals the idea and publishes it. Well, whatever.
Yeah.
If you do, good for you.
If they do, we have evidence you came up with it. This is recorded, and this is going to go up.
Yeah.
So you go hunt down this video on the internet.
Yeah, I honestly, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the execution of the idea that takes all the work.
It is
So
true.
if someone does all that blood, sweat, and tears and makes that a game, more power to them.
I can see it.
I do have half-finished rules for it. I just don't have time to finish it. And right now, Petersen Games is not in a position to publish a game. They already have such a backlog of things to publish. This would be way down the road. So
Maybe it'll be the next map for Memoir 44.
that's right. Well, actually, I forgot about a game. I have a fully designed game called because it has a code name.
Yes, yes, code names.
Yeah, it's a code name, and I forgot. I can't. Oh, the code name is Hammer. So code name Hammer, and there's almost no way you know what it is based on that, but it is a two-player tactical game, I guess. And I can't tell much about it without giving away the theme. But I designed it again. Zoran Dobijevic, the guy who helped me with both Tooth Fairy game and Marry the Monster, turned my original idea that it certainly wasn't publishable, wasn't a fully final game, into a very good game. And our former sales manager that we recently had to lay off when we laid off 70% of our staff in a very dark day, he had been waiting and waiting and waiting for us to get this published. We always pushed it back because we had other priorities. But it's been designed for about 2 years now.
Oh wow!
And we finally finished. So it's been an idea and been through design since 7-8 years now. I finally got it to we finally commissioned Zoran as a freelancer to finish the design that was finished a few years ago, and in the past year we did all the art. It's one of the games that has a code name for which the art is finished. So we still need to do some editing and layout, but we could send it to the factory and get it going whenever we want to, but we have to slot it into our schedule. But anyway, what I was saying was our sales manager really liked it and really thought it will be successful. So I hope, because my first two games were bombs. Now this is not a family game like Marry the Monster and Tooth Fairy. This is more into our core audience.
So can I scream? I have the exclusive interview on this now.
Yes. But it's a two-player game. It's I don't want to say adult.
Mature.
But it's not mature.
Mature audience.
It's not a family game.
Right.
But it's like Cthulhu Wars. It's not like Cthulhu Wars, but it's that level of maturity, right?
Right.
Needed to play. And it's asymmetric.
Awesome.
The footsteps of my dad, because my first two games weren't. Tooth Fairy is not asymmetric. Marry the Monster is not asymmetric. This one is two sides. Each side is very different tactics, different play styles, and one day it may see the light of day.
Awesome. So do you have that on Tabletop Simulator yet, or how are you just doing paper and testing that, or?
We tested it with in-person people.
Makes sense.
It might have been tested on tabletop at one point, but that was all a couple of years ago. I can't even remember because again, it's been finished. It's like 100% finished. Even the art and everything is finished.
See, now you have me intrigued, very, very intrigued, and now I want to ask more, but I know I can't.
The only thing I will tell you one thing: it has vampires in it. All I will say. It is not Cthulhu themed.
So one of my top 10 games of all time is Fury of Dracula, but hey, that's just me. Fury of Dracula.
It's nothing like Fury of Dracula, but that is a fun game.
It is. Classic game.
It is.
So speaking of games outside of Petersen Games wheelhouse, what is your favorite non-Petersen Games design game? Just to kind of get an idea of where your design is.
Tabletop board games?
Tabletop, yeah. Pure tabletop.
Tabletop board games. I don't know if I have one single favorite, but among them would be Civilization, like the original.
The classic one from Avalon Hill?
Avalon Hill.
Right.
The classic Avalon Hill Advanced Civilization.
Right. I want to clarify that because, Fantasy Flight Games has their Civilization and their Civilization New Dawn, which was, I think Civilization was 2008 and New Dawn was 2019, I think.
I have not played those.
Right,
so
but you're talking about the classic grandfather, great classic game.
Yep. The Advanced Civilization. Yep.
Very great game.
Yeah, it's so good. It has the entire game of Pit inside of it. Right?
Right, it's a very...
The card game?
Yep.
The exact same rules for Pit is one segment of Civilization. I also love how instead of having... I mean, I love strategy games and war games, but I love how the combat is so I'm a big ancient history buff, I would say. Like, so back, you see, the very top row is military history, but there's a section you can't see on the side that is ancient history, which has some military history, but is also just like ancient history, right? Antiquity and stuff like this. Ancient China, ancient Greece, ancient, you name it, right? So what I'm saying is the game Civilization is interesting because the way they do combat, there's not really combat, it's just this land can support this many people. So if you have more people in that land and they starve, if they are of different civilizations, they take off one by one until they're down to how many can survive. I just love it, right?
It's a great game.
So the competition is different. Anyway, yeah, it's everything about Civilization is great.
Fantastic design.
Well, the only thing not great about it is that it takes 7 hours to play.
Oh, easily. That's one of those games where you invite everybody over and saying, we're going to order pizza, we're going to turn off our cell phones, and we're going to make sure everybody understands that this is going to be our full day enjoyment and our great game that we're going to do.
So I have 4 friends, my 4 closest buddies that I grew up with, my 4 best friends, and I grew up playing games with them. So we grew up playing Axis and Allies, Civilization, Titan.
Oh, wow. Titan. That's a good old reference there.
Titan's an amazing game with some serious flaws.
Yes.
But it's also amazing in so many ways. One of these friends of mine, they have, sadly it's not available on iPhone, so I can't have it, but he has an Android. Apparently there's a game called Colossus.
Yes.
Which is the entire Titan.
I'm an Android user, yes.
Yeah. So he plays he's a lawyer, but he plays Colossus all the time. I don't know how, maybe he's doing it in between talking to clients or something. But he tells me about his, like, what happens in some game in Colossus sometimes. And I'm like, I may have to switch to Android literally so I can play that. Because you can play a whole game of Titan in like 10 minutes, 30 minutes.
Right.
If you don't have the actual board game set up of it, right?
Right.
So I grew up playing these games. So what I was going to say was, last year my friend turned 40, and he said he told his wife, one of these 4 friends we grew up with, we all live in different places. Well, 2 of them live in the Houston area, 1 in the Dallas area, I'm in Utah. So he said, for my birthday, I want to have a game weekend.
Oh, cool.
He's a doctor, there's a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, and then me. So these are like four very, very smart and very successful people, literally a lawyer, doctor, and dentist. And then there's me who like runs this struggling small game company. But we all love games, right? So they all love, originally I would send them free copies of the games, right? Because they were, 9 years ago, they were still in medical school or law school. Now they're like making a lot more money than me. And so I'm like, no, you back the Kickstarter yourself. Buy the games from our store, right? I don't care if you're my closest friend. You can afford it. Like, you need to pay me now. So they've like play tested always the earliest versions of all of these games. Anyway, so last year he was like, I want to play Civilization with my friends. That's what I want for my birthday present. So his wife coordinated it, and we all flew down or traveled down to Houston and played Civilization for like all day.
Wow.
That's what he wanted. And we had played it for years. I mean, we were messing up some of the rules because it's been so long, but we played it so much in summers between grades.
Well, it's like riding a bike. You don't forget some of the classic games. Like, there's some games I own that I haven't played in a long time, and I can pull them out and still do them.
Well, the rules we messed up, as you'd imagine, mostly had to do with the cataclysms. What are they called? Well, so when you're trading,
right,
when you're trading resources, you can sneak give them a calamity. That's what.
Right, calamities. Yes.
Give them a calamity. Now there's red-backed calamities where when you draw it, you can't trade it. And then there's calamities with the same backside as the goods you're trading. So when you have that, you can trade the calamity. What we had forgotten was when someone trades you a calamity, you must then put it down and reveal it. that's yours. We were like, it was hot potato. And then he would trade it to someone else. And then we did that for a few rounds, and then someone realized that that was not the rule. If someone trades it to you, if you get it, and then you are able to trade it away before trading is over, that person who initially gets it traded to, they're stuck with it, right? We didn't realize that, so we were doing it wrong. So someone was stuck with like 7 calamities because he was the unfortunate hot potato at the end or something.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then we were like, wait a minute, that's not how it works. So yeah, we remembered most of the rules, but okay. So long story to answer your question, Civilization is probably number one in the top 5.
Awesome.
I heard my daughter open the door. Maybe not. I would say I'm also a grognard to a point. I like Europe Engulfed by GMT Games.
GMT Classic Company.
Fantastic Western theater, European theater for World War II. Napoleonic Wars is also a fantastic game. Let's see. I am very fond of Cosmic Encounter, and for me, I like the simplest, most stripped down version without lucre or anything, like just Cosmic Encounter with no extras, but with the largest stack of potential aliens you can use. That's how I like it. They keep adding little fiddly rules to add to it. It's like, no, stripped down game, but any alien civ. Love Cosmic Encounter. Honestly, a lot of people in the comments, if they know this game, are going to be like, seriously, that game sucks. But a very old game called Nuclear War.
Oh, and the nuclear escalation expansion.
I don't think I've played that.
It adds more stuff. It's basically, for people who don't know, it's Munchkin as a nuclear war game where everybody's blowing everybody up left and right. And even when you get blown up, you still get to do a nuclear retaliation versus everybody.
And I played
Beer and pretzels.
The solar system blow up.
Yes.
Right? Because if on the final strike you kill somebody and then or if you're using the 100 megaton warhead,
yes,
and it's a triple the yield or something, it has a chain reaction and blows up the solar system.
The whole planet just blows up and everybody loses the game. Yes.
I've had that happen. I've played many games where everyone loses. I've played games where one person succeeds. I've played sad games where someone loses during peacetime.
Oh, really?
It's down to 2. It goes back to peacetime. It's down to 2, and use propaganda to take their last people.
Yep.
Right? It's a really dumb game. And by the way, you mentioned Munchkin. I hate Munchkin.
So do
I understand. Steve Jackson, that's printing money for him, and that's great. Kudos to that. But it's such a boring game after you play it once.
Munchkin is like Monopoly. It's like that thing where it's like there's 500 different versions of it, so you get like the inside joke or the inside whatever. But beyond that, it's
not a great game.
No.
And it's fun to play once as an experience. And I get that most people who play it, I assume, they're not really playing it for the mechanics, but for the beer and pretzels fun interaction.
Right.
I get that. That's fine. So Nuclear War, I just played it so much growing up. It was like, look, we would play Civilization or Axis and Allies or something, and not Risk, though. I mean, I played Risk like 3 times in my life. After playing it that and knowing about other games, I was done with Risk. Like Axis and Allies and things, and Civilization and Diplomacy and these other games, it's like you have the intensity of focus with your strategy and really you're trying to win, right? So sometimes you need the opposite of that. A game where it's just silly.
Yes.
And it's mostly luck and you don't care. That's Nuclear War.
Yep.
That's also Cosmic Encounter.
Yes.
That's also Titan.
Yes.
Titan like mixes it because it's like it has the random luck of building your army, but then it has really fun tactical battles.
Yes, very true.
Actually, really, you can really, if you do those, it's still lots of luck-based battles because you're rolling dice to hit. But if you're really good at those battles, you can do better in Titan than the luck would normally, give you.
I'd almost say you can do that nuclear assault too. Unless the spinner cheats you, but barring the spinner cheating you, there is some strategy and tactics to it.
There's some.
Yes.
Right. By the way, I've always wanted to use that mechanic of you lay down, you plan your turn 2 turns in advance.
Right.
Tanks vs. Mummies has that element.
Oh, very cool.
It's not finished.
Very
Where
cool.
Basically, what it is that it's only on one side. So the mummies can do their turn as they see fit. The tank commander has to get the radio instructions of do this, and then they're moving the tanks.
Oh, very cool.
They can't make a decision. I mean, yes, radio is instant. My point is that if your commander says, go to this hill and scout, see if you can shoot some bad guys, some enemy down there, you have to go do that, and then you can, after doing that, relay to your tank commander what you see. So I'm basically saying that's the theme, that's the thematic rationale, the narrative rationale, and what that means in practice is the player who's playing the tanks has to plan their turn their cards a few turns ahead.
Have you ever played Memoir 44 Commander?
No. Does it have that element?
Memoir 44, not exactly, but it's the same idea. Like Memoir 44 Commander is like one person plays the commander, and they hand out the commands to the players who are actually doing the actions of the move, but they can't influence the moves and the actions. They're just handing out the commands to the individual players, which creates this interesting thing where players are kind of playing a little bit in advance like that. Totally different mechanic of how it's done, but the result is the same.
That sounds to me that's even more closely mimicking, real like military operations, where you have the commander and you have the guys executing the command, and there's all sorts of stuff with that.
Yes.
That's really cool. No, I take it back. I think I have played Memoir 44 once. I know Sandy has it in his house. He has a bunch of versions of it. It's possible I played it. Does it have tiles for the units? Or am I thinking of a different game?
I think the most recent versions of it, it's made by Days of Wonder, and I think Days of Wonder, when they made it, they actually have the miniatures for the tanks, and for the artillery, I think they have miniatures for it, but you do lay out little tiles that modify the actual map, because it's just a board, a hex board.
It's a very zoomed in tactical.
Yes,
right?
very
Like
zoomed in.
individual tanks.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I played it once. Also, Mare Nostrum, great game.
I've never played it. I've heard good things about it.
Serenissima. I'm fond of Serenissima.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fond the original version. Okay. Here's one of my all-time favorite games. Vinci.
That is a classic.
Okay, you know Vinci.
Yes.
Most people watching this will probably say, "What's Vinci?" But then they will know this game. Now I'm blanking.
Talk about the Small World?
Small World.
Yes.
Small World.
I had a feeling I knew where you were going with that one.
Yeah, so Small World is Vinci, basically.
Kind of,
although
yes.
It's a lesser version.
Yes, very much
The
so.
art's better, the theme is more fun if you like fantasy. I have nothing, I like fantasy too, but I way more like actual history, I'm very fond of that. But also fantasy. I'm not saying I don't like that. But I love that Vinci is historically themed, right? I like that. And so with Small World, they changed some things, and I think the matchups, there's more possible matchups, I think, in the original Vinci, if I'm remembering correctly. But anyway, I played Vinci in the 90s, and it was in the early 2000s, and it was like, I don't know when it was first published.
It's an older game. It's, yeah.
Loved the heck out of that game in high school.
Yeah.
Vinci is so good.
It is. Classic.
And then when Small World came out, I played it, and I was like, it's crappy Vinci.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why won't I play Vinci?
Bring back Vinci.
Yes.
It's so good. And I know Small World is a fan. Lots of people like Small World, but that's because they haven't played Vinci. It's
Yes.
way better.
Yes. So true.
If Vinci didn't exist, I would be right there with you and say, yeah, Small World's a great game. Because it is a great game. It's just, you gotta play Vinci.
Yep.
It's so much better.
Yep.
Okay, so, and it is the same game. Small World is the same game.
Pretty much, yeah.
Scary, yeah. It's not like Cthulhu Wars and Chaos in the Old World, where, yes, there's some similarities, but they're not the same game.
No, especially when you add in the Horn Rat expansion or anything like that. Chaos in the Old World plays so much differently. Yes, it's the demon hordes wiping or raging war across the map, but
And it is action point, and it is asymmetric, but,
Right.
but that's where the similarities end. The
Right.
play experience is different. It just is, right. But Small World is like, they took Vinci, they slightly dumbed it down, and then they changed the theme.
Right.
Literally, that's it. So, It's the dumbing down. It's not so much the theme, although I prefer the historical theme, but it's more the dumbing down and the removing of some of the possible matchups, because you can have some crazy matchups in Vinci.
Yes.
Because it's just any two, right?
Right.
Whereas in Small World, it's a two from this category, two from this set, and so that's what's different. So all right. So where are we going? What are the games? I mean, I've listed several games.
No, you've listed quite a few. So
Okay, two more final games. I love
two more.
chess.
Two more.
I love chess.
Right.
To the point where I've invented lots of my own fairy chess.
So did you ever? Are you a fan of Mantic Games? They do. Basically, Mantic is a couple of guys who work for Games Workshop said, "Hey, we're tired of Games Workshop's policies. Let's go make our own company." They kind of do like, basically, I don't want it to sound like I'm being negative because it's easy to sound negative to this, but they basically take a lot of Games Workshop style games and kind of rebrand them. So Games Workshop has Blood Bowl. Mantic made Dread Ball, which is basically instead of football, it's more like a rugby style game. Instead of having Kill Team, they have Dead Zone, but they do a lot of the same things. They made a game called Loca or something like that, which was a variety of chess. If you're a chess fan, I suggest it, if you can find it. I think it's called Loca or something like that. I'll send you a link later if you're interested.
Yeah, send me a link. Yeah, no, I love chess. I mean, and I love fairy chess, as in, if you don't know what that means, it's just variants, and they've been going on for hundreds of years. There's very old fairy chess variants. Some of them are very interesting and fun, but I made up my own. But yeah, I like chess. I'm not saying I'm great at it, although I have a cousin who is really good at chess. He's ranked online in the U.S. Like, I think he's in the top 1,000 players.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he's not like a grandmaster or something, but he's really good. So at family reunions, it's really fun. You play chess with him; it just demolishes you in like 5 moves. It's amazing. So and bridge. The last two games. Contract bridge.
Bridge.
Okay,
You know, I always feel ashamed to admit this. I've never played bridge in my life. I know how to play bridge. I know the concept of bridge. I know how it's played. Never played bridge.
So I was a Boy Scout, and I'm an Eagle Scout, in fact. So growing up, we played at Scout Camp. When you have time, you play like spades and hearts,
Right.
and other card games, right? Mostly spades and hearts and other things, and things similar. And like, then my dad introduced me to bridge. He used to play bridge when he worked at Microprose. He had like a and whenever he worked at video game companies, his lunch hour was usually grabbing people and playing board games.
Oh, nice.
So even in that 20-year period between his tabletop careers, right, he was playing board games like lunch hour pretty much with coworkers. And there was a time where he had a bridge group. So anyway, he introduced me to bridge one time when I was like, at Scout Camp we played spades and it's fun. He's like, let me show you bridge. Because spades is to bridge what checkers is to chess.
I've heard that before.
Nothing
I've
wrong
heard
with
that before.
spades. It's not like a bad game, but bridge is like, it has so much more depth and it's so much more fun.
Right.
Right? So you can get bridge on your phone. My go-to, I don't play a lot of app games, but if I'm standing in the line of the DMV, so to speak, I play bridge. So you can get it on your phone, play bridge.
I may have to. So now I'm going to go off on a tangent here because I do have a little bit of script of questions I want to talk with you about today. So this is totally a tangent, but I'm curious now. Theomachy was always more of a poker style game. Why did Theomachy turn into a poker game instead of a bridge game since you and your dad like bridge so much? And that's just me, total tangent right now, just asking.
Because we didn't design it.
I thought you guys designed Theomachy.
Sort of. Okay.
Oh, this is interesting now.
By the way, last Christmas I was in one quick aside. Last Christmas I was in Dallas visiting, and my dad, me, and 2 of my brothers were playing bridge.
Interesting.
We do. I mean, we get together. I mean, we'll play other games too, but like bridge is still a go-to game for us after all the many games we've played over the decades. It's that good. The thing about chess is 2-player, so you don't get to play that as much. But bridge, it's 4-player. So, okay, so. What are they called? I'm blanking on their name, but a Polish publisher approached us at Essen in 2014 and they said, "We love Cthulhu Wars. We want you to publish our game Theomachy in English, because it had only been published in Polish and German, and it did very well in Polish, probably a small market, semi-small, and German, which is a big market for board games, and it did well in the German language version. And they said, we want to do an English version. Obviously, there's a giant market out there for this game, if Polish and German is any indication. And at the time, all we had done was Cthulhu Wars on Kickstarter. It wasn't even out yet. They just approached us and said, how about this? And Sandy was working on what would later become Planet Apocalypse. That was the game he was working on when he wasn't tying up Cthulhu Wars expansions that still needed design work, right? Because this, which I think at that time were mostly done. So his main game was Planet Apocalypse. It wasn't called that at the time, but that's what he was working on. Either that or God War. Anyway, so they approached us and were like, you know what? It's going to take a while for me to finish this Apocalypse game. Let's publish this other game. They approached us in essence. They pitched it to us. We thought the game was fun. And what they said was, we want you to publish it in English, obviously, on a Kickstarter, and we want you to add Cthulhu stuff to it.
Oh, interesting. So the original does not have a Cthulhu theme.
Right. The original theme was not Cthulhu related at all. It was just mythological deities from different places. So we added the mythos stuff, and that was a collaboration. So Sandy would say, here's some ideas for, here's how the Cthulhu ability should work, because he's Cthulhu. And then the actual designer of the game would refine it into what would work for Theomachy. So it was kind of a collaboration. I mean, Sandy's a game designer, so we also suggested that, but he went from the theme angle and made sure it was thematically Cthulhu, or whatever the thing is, and then they came and made sure it fit for Theomachy.
Interesting.
So they collaborated, and so Sandy got credit for design, I think, in it. But yeah, it was originally a Polish game, and so we didn't change any of the core things. It was Texas Hold'em Poker.
Awesome.
It was Texas Hold'em Poker plus Dominion.
I've been obviously doing this hobby for 9 years now. I've been a customer of Petersen Games. I've backed multiple Petersen Games products. Matter of fact, I am still a backer of the Damon Sultan, the Cats. I am a backer of Planet Apocalypse 2. The second, the God's War. I actually, if you look at my shelves behind me, I know you can kind of see the God's War over here in the corner. But that shelf you're seeing, hold on, gotta get the point. Just right, can you see it? Can you see it? I don't know if you can see it. So that whole shelf is like one of those Costco style shelves. The other half of it is all Cthulhu War stuff, because I literally have all the factions, took time to paint them up and everything like that. So I'm coming from somebody who is completely not only a customer, but also somebody who's in the hobby, somebody who's been doing this for a long, long time. So I kind of have my own standpoint of things, because I have my own personal selfish reasons, because I want everything you guys are done, because you guys, I'm a backer of you guys. You guys have me as a customer and everything like that. So that's going to kind of influence the questions I'm going to ask and some of the things that I think is going to be very interesting to other people, because I'm coming from this as the same standpoint as a customer. I'm not coming from this as a YouTube personality. And there's some YouTube personalities who think, I'm not going to name names because it's going to sound like I'm being a negative person. I don't want to do that. But there's some YouTube personalities who are a personality first and a content producer second. I kind of consider myself the other way around. I'm a content producer. I don't want to be a personality. I want to help other people enjoy the hobby. That's why when I have my channel is about teaching people how to play the games versus me standing there for 5 minutes and telling you why I think the game's fun. So
That's awesome.
That's where I'm coming from.
I prefer that.
So
It's better to be a content producer first.
So I would like to take a few minutes to talk about some of the current game projects that Petersen Games has actually been working on, not Kickstarter stuff. So I would like to take a couple times back I think maybe end of 2021, early 22, you guys up to that point used to send out monthly emails that had a whole bunch of projects that had secret names on them, so people didn't really know what those projects were. But some of those projects, we have slowly learned about what some of them are. For example, TerraPass is one of the ones that came out of that. So are there any other secret projects? I know we've already revealed a couple now at this point. Are there any other secret projects that are still being worked on that have those secret code names that we could learn a little bit about right now?
So, sure. I will say a lot of things are in flux because we recently laid off our team. So there's not much being worked on in some senses for future publications. A lot of things are on pause, but that doesn't mean they won't resume. Let me pull up. You won't be able to see this, but my master sheet on my other screen of all projects. Literally all Petersen Games projects. So, and let me address the elephant in the room first. Every single Kickstarter that we have outstanding needs zero development work or illustration or anything like that.
Oh,
They're
good.
all 100% done. So there's no need for anybody on our team to like sit there and tinker with things. Now I say that, and I actually just realized recently, like on our Discord channel, Sandy went and said, "Hey, because we're going to do the Return to Planet Apocalypse Kickstarter, we need to finalize some things. So tell me if there's any balance changes you'd like to make." So I mean, yes, at the very end, final polish of things, there's always tinkering with the words of a card or words of something to make sure it's exactly perfect. But the Kickstarter projects are not in active development. They've all been done for a long time. We put them to Kickstarter after the art and the design is complete. So no challenge there. It's all manufacturing and other logistical challenges. So that frees up our team to work on games that are even further down the road.
Right. So if I may interject there, I am a firm believer that every company needs to keep working on projects. So that makes perfect sense to me. Can we talk about Terror Pass? What can you tell us about the game of Terror Pass itself? What's the elevator pitch on Terror Pass?
It is the final climactic moment of a Call of Cthulhu scenario in board game form.
Okay.
So in a Call of Cthulhu scenario, for those who don't know, Call of Cthulhu is the original investigatory Cthulhu mythos board game, in which the players are, instead of, the PCs are called investigators,
Right.
instead of heroes or barbarians, like D&D, fighters, whatever. They are investigators. And they are regular people who are kind of investigating things in the Cthulhu mythos, where there are alien entities and secret cultists who worship those alien entities, who are trying to thwart you, and you are just a regular person without any special skills, but you're an investigator trying to find out. And usually, so there's a lot of mystery aspects and investigation, and there's way less, almost no combat, contrast to other role-playing games, right? And so, but in these, there is some combat, and of course, Chaosium, who publishes it, has recently done like a pulp Cthulhu,
Which is
like,
supposed to be pretty interesting, where it's a little more
it's
super,
like
not,
Indiana Jones
yeah.
meets Cthulhu, because so it's like, yeah, you can punch, well, you can always punch, but it's more like Indiana Jones style, and that's fun. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But the point is, classic Call of Cthulhu is investigation, not combat, right? That's the
Right.
major distinction. And as you uncover the evil plot of the bad cultists or monsters or aliens, usually there's, like any good role-playing scenario or adventure, there is a climax, right? Now, in this case, it might not be fighting a dragon. It might be thwarting the cultists' evil ritual to summon up some dead god, right?
Right.
But it's still a climax, right? And that's where there's going to be the most fighting, or at least something like fighting, right? And so, what in a board game setting, and in mysteries and investigation is great for role playing, right? You have the keeper. That's what the game master's called.
Right.
Cthulhu. You have the keeper who's like revealing the things as they discover stuff in the story. That's great for role playing. Well, for a board game, it's kind of boring to well, I guess it depends on the board game, but it's like uncovering clues. You want to play a board game where there's mechanics. So it gets rid of all of that, and it's kind of like you're at the final climax. Now there still is things to discover. There's like cards face down you have to come across and learn things about. But it's about that final ending where you are the investigators there to stop the cultists or the Great Old One from whatever dire plot they're doing. So that was a little longer than an elevator pitch, but that's the elevator pitch.
It was a big elevator.
So here's the mechanics pitch. I'm trying to tell myself if I should say the quiet part out loud or not. Okay, I will, because I just said that I'm thinking about it. So the idea is that it is the competitor to Arkham Horror.
Okay.
The idea is that it is a better version of Arkham Horror, right? Sandy and I, look, Sandy, we talked about this earlier. I don't remember if this was part of recorded or not, but he was one of the developers on the original Arkham Horror. He had nothing to do with the Fantasy Flight version. I think Richard Lanius, the original designer, came back and did that. I've played Arkham Horror, the newest version. Our thing with Arkham Horror is it's too fiddly.
I don't like the 3rd edition personally.
Yeah. I haven't played the 3rd edition, but even the other Fantasy Flight ones, it takes 4 hours to set up and 1 hour to play, and then 4 hours to take down.
Yes.
It's too fiddly, and I have cousins and friends, and I know people who love it, and they'll spend an afternoon playing it, and that's fine. It's just not my thing. I'm not saying it's a terrible game or something, but Sandy's games tend to be fast plays, right? Like Cthulhu Wars. You can play it in 90 minutes. With an experienced group of people, you can play it in 1 hour. And yet it's an epic game on the scale of Axis and Allies, It has all of that strategy and elements and tactics going into it, but you don't need that many hours. So Terror Pass is a much shorter game than Arkham Horror, and that was by design. And so it has all the hallmarks of Sandy Petersen Games. It is co-op, though, of course. It is explicitly a Call of Cthulhu board game. So, and I know, so is Arkham Horror. I think recently, I know they pay royalties to Chaosium. Recently, they may have been removing the Call of Cthulhu logo, but it's still technically a licensed thing.
Right.
Fantasy Flight. But anyway, ours is a lot more in-your-face branded because we want it to be. Our Fantasy Flight doesn't need Chaosium's help to market their stuff, right? We do. Chaosium is much bigger than Petersen Games, and they're great friends of us. We love Chaosium. Sandy has known the owners of Chaosium for a long time. He was he was great friends with the great Greg Stafford, who sold the company to the current owners. And anyway, so Chaosium's awesome. They're bigger than Petersen Games, and so this game will say Call of Cthulhu Terror Pass.
Oh, nice.
Right? Yeah, we actually wanted to do the Call of Cthulhu or Call of Cthulhu the board game, and they were like, we tried really hard to get Chaosium to agree to that, and they were like, we want it to be literally Call of Cthulhu the board game, the official board game. And like, no, I mean, look, we have Arkham Horror and we have other board games, and they're like, we want to do other board games, and it would be, if we had one that was called the board game, it's like, well, what are these others? So they were like, you have to come up with a name. So ultimately, we landed on Terror Paths. Sandy wanted to call it Paths of Terror. But
Terror Pass flows better a little bit, I think.
It does. But also, in quick writing and emails and stuff, Call of Cthulhu is COC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Capital C, little O, big C. So in internal emails in our team, we would
COCPOT.
talk about this game, and COCPOT all together, and that's what we'd be writing to each other. And at a certain point, I said, "No, no, it's not cockpot.
Exactly.
No, it is going to be cockpit, cocktoop."
Yeah, exactly. Much
right?
better.
It's not. Then it's definitely an acronym and not a word.
Right.
Right? Because it's COCTP.
Yes.
Right? So, that is why it's Terror Pass and not Passive Terror, and you heard it straight from the source.
Perfect.
Sandy was like, no, Passive Terror. And actually, I think Terror Pass sounds better too.
Flows a little better.
And so Terror Passes is what it became. And uh, here's another great thing about it. And it's, first of all, it's going to be, we think it's going to be a hit direct to market because all everybody who plays it and who has played it online, you can play it in various ways. Tabletop simulator, I think. You have to be like on our Discord and find the right things. It's not like an officially released product in that sense, but it can be played. And at conventions and stuff, everybody loves it. Like more so than most games we've had played before they were released. So I think it's going to be good. People really like it. It's co-op. Here's the really cool feature about it. Two cool features. Number one, there are no phases. Everybody just takes turns forever and ever. So, well, I take that back. There's a good guy turn and a bad guy turn. But you're not like doing, you know how there's like upkeep phase and this phase and that phase and all these specific things happening?
That's actually something I appreciate about Hyperspace, not to go on a tangent, but that's one thing I appreciate about Hyperspace. You guys took out the upkeep phase, and the game incorporates that to speed up that gameplay. Sorry for the tangent, but go ahead.
No, that's okay. Honestly, if we ever did a Call of Cthulhu Wars 2nd Edition, I'm not saying we ever would or even talk about it, but if we were, I think we would do away with the phases. You have like gather power. Now, I don't know how maybe we would still have some phases, but there's 4. It's like there's action, gather power, doom phase, or determine first player is somewhere in there, right?
Right.
It's like you really need all of that. Maybe you need gather power and action phase at minimum. But you know, I mean, the way Cthulhu Wars works, I mean, it's fine, obviously, but when you did Hyperspace, it was like, okay, Hyperspace has a lot of similarities to Cthulhu Wars in that it's asymmetric strategy game, right? I mean, with area control, asymmetric strategy game, like Cthulhu Wars. So obviously, it is a different game. It plays differently. It's not a reboot of Cthulhu Wars with sci-fi trappings by any means. But he wanted to say, okay, I did Cthulhu Wars. How can I improve on that entire package of characteristics for a game? And one of them was, everybody just takes a turn. There's no phases. You're right. And so Terrapath, I think Sandy's on not a kick that you would say, but like he's wanting to keep that be part of his current game design projects, right? His game design mode,
right. Well, some people may not realize it, but the original Cthulhu Wars, you actually went through and modified that because the original version started off with wasn't the gather power phase like the very first phase in the original game, and then you guys actually modified it to be the third or something like that to kind of fix part of that issue?
Right. Now it's still the same phases, but it's just more elegant and obviously easier to start with the action phase.
Right.
Start right out doing stuff. Because in the course of setup, you do those first 3 phases. So that's why.
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So Terrapath is a lot more elegant than that. There are more phase-like things because it's a co-op game and the bad guys have to do something. The game itself has to take its turn and do something. But it's way lower key and way driven on players are always doing things, taking actions. With all the phase things in games, it's too fiddly and things take long and it's clunky. So it has more of an elegance to it than, not to throw shade, but than like Arkham Horror, where there's a whole series of discrete things you're always doing. Yeah. And the other thing about it that's really amazing, I think, is that when you start a scenario, so the way you designed it is there's a map and there's a scenario, and that scenario each map can handle like 3 scenarios or something, and then you've kind of used up that map. So the core game will have 2 maps and 7 scenarios, 3 for one, 3 for the other, and a 7th that actually incorporates both maps. And you play them in order. And so, if you want to get the full story, so to speak. And so each map, you're like going around, you're discovering things, you're fighting cultists, and you're trying to solve the mystery and win. But the thing is, it's co-op. There's not like victory points or anything. Everybody wins or everybody loses, right? So when you start the game, you do not know the win conditions. They are different for every scenario, and you never know them. You have to discover the win conditions based on what you discover as you play. And so that kind of has the Call of Cthulhu element. I did say earlier it's the climax of a Call of Cthulhu scenario, and it is. But even in the climax, you're still discovering things about the big bad, right? You know, and so discovering how to defeat them or something, this or that. You know some basics when it starts. There's a little flavor text saying like, here's, here's what you know, here's what's going on, here's why you were at this location investigating, here's facts you know. But then as you go along, you discover what you need to do as a team to win. And when I say discover what you need to do, like mechanics even, you don't know the mechanics of winning from a game standpoint. And so that's like part of the mystery. And so every adventure is different. Now that the downside there is you can't really replay. So it's not exactly a legacy game, but you can't really replay a scenario because you go in knowing how to win, and it's going to be easy.
I'm glad you covered that because that was actually my next question. Because a lot of board games, especially story style games, the big hard thing to design in a story based game is what's the replay catch? Because Arkham Horror, since we talked about that a few times, the replay on Arkham Horror is picking different investigators versus a different grade old one. That's where your replay comes in.
Yeah, and the replay is, and there's so many things in just the decks and the cards and clues that just kind of sort of randomizes it, so it's a different experience. But if you're really good at it, like my cousins who play it, and then unless they get really lots of bad luck, they always do really good, right? Because they know exactly how to do anything against any grade old one and whatever setup, right? And so, yeah, that's the thing. So with this, the downside is you can really only play each one once, at least with the same group. I guess you could theoretically have different players, and you might know, but as long as you don't tell everybody what it is, but the thing is, you can do multiple adventures per map, and the idea is that we will release very cheap. So it's also kind of like role playing in that the core game is like the core player's guide / game master's guide. It does have adventures. It does have those 7 expansions, but it's like this is the core rule book, the role playing book, and then we're going to release all these scenarios and campaigns you can buy.
Have you played Time Stories by chance?
Any what?
Have you played Time Stories by chance?
My Sandy and Lincoln have. My brother has.
So kind of the similar idea where you're going to get the basic core game and then you're going to be buying like expansion packs which just modify the base game.
Right. No, they don't, and they don't really modify the base game. They will each have their own map and their own decks for the adventure. You will reuse investigators and all the core cards you need, like item cards. That's all the same. But those things really don't have much to do with how the scenario plays, right? So in every game, generally speaking, you'll always have the same deck of items, but you won't have the same deck of board and adventure-specific stuff, and enemies, and the map. And so, yeah, the idea is we'll be publishing adventures, just kind of like you publish more role-playing adventures, and the idea is, if it's a hit, to do it indefinitely. To always be publishing more adventures. And one of the things we really want to do that Chaosium is like, go nuts and do it, is we want to do, so these adventures will be mostly, here's a map with 3 scenarios. After doing a few of those, we want to start doing slightly bigger campaigns. And so we want to take old classic Call of Cthulhu campaigns and turn them into Terror Paths adventures. So, Masks of Nyarlathotep might be a box set of Terror Paths where it's like 7 adventures. You play in order, and it's all masks. And then Horror on the Orient Express.
That's actually a classic one, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Shadows of Yog-Sothoth, and the Azathoth one. I forget what it's called. So there's a few of those. I mean, obviously the most famous is Masks.
Right.
You probably want to do that first. But Horror on the Orient Express would be one. So the point is those would be bigger than single, just small scenarios, right? They would be where there's multiple scenarios together, like the core game one. But that will be down the road. First, we've got to release the core game, make sure it's successful. Sandy has done he's designed already like the first 6 expansions. A lot of them are codename stuff in that thing. I mean, that's the thing is a lot of those codename things aren't necessarily new games, but sometimes they're just expansion
Right.
releases.
That makes
So,
sense.
right, that's why there's so. That's also why there's so many.
Right.
And so yeah, after we do those 6, the plan is eventually to start doing slightly bigger expansions, and that would be, and we want to start with classic. So I hope Chaosium doesn't get mad at me for even saying this, because I don't know if they told us in emails it was fine that we would do this. Obviously, we haven't gotten to the point where we're doing it. This is a licensed property. We pay Chaosium royalties. I don't imagine doing masks and Pour on the Orient Express would change anything. Like we would, I don't think we pay extra royalties. It's still a Call of Cthulhu licensed product. We pay the same one because when Sandy makes his own scenarios, they're not based on any Call of Cthulhu specific thing. You still have to pay those royalties because it's Call of Cthulhu Terrapeth.
Right.
So my assumption is something where we take an actual Call of Cthulhu thing. It's not going to be different illegally. But anyway, that stuff I actually don't know for sure. And but that is our plan. And the other thing is we also want to. This is also down the road, but we want to start doing like more fan collaboration. So Sandy does not want to sit around making expansions for TerraPass forever. He has other games to work on. So he wants to kind of like how role-playing companies like Chaosium gets freelance writers to do a lot of the content for stuff they publish. We want to amass kind of a group of designers, freelance, to make the future TerraPath scenarios.
That could be fantastic.
They're the ones doing it because we want to release it regularly. We want to release a new one like every quarter of the year.
And what a lot of people may not realize is that not TerraPass, but Call of Cthulhu actually has different scenarios. You have Cthulhu by Gaslight. Sorry, can't talk today apparently. You have Standard Cthulhu. You have the Cthulhu that you already mentioned, the other one that's more of the Indiana Jones style. So there's actually a lot of material to pull from to make.
It's more than just you mentioned. Yeah, there's
Right.
a lot of settings. Now, most people, as I understand it, play in the classic, just 1920s setting. But yeah, there's a lot of different settings for Call of Cthulhu, and yeah, TerraPass could do any or all of that. So the original TerraPass game is modern day, but you can have expansions that are literally any time period. So the main point is we were thinking in our mind it'll be like 4 times a year, right? One for each season we release a game or an expansion. But Sandy doesn't want to always be designing that, so we'll get freelance designers to be developing those, and we'll go from there. And if it's successful, we want to keep doing that forever. It's a very fun game.
Awesome.
I've played 4, I think, of the 7 core scenarios. It's fun. And it's so fun to not know how you're supposed to win. You literally don't know how you're going to win. You know, and there's timer things sometimes because like occultists are doing a ritual and you have to you have to do certain things. You find out suddenly you have to do certain things before X time has passed, which can be measured in all sorts of ways, number of turns or things. You're like, stop it, and it's supposed to represent the cultist doing a ritual right in the basement. You got to go to the basement and stop them. So there's all sorts of fun. That was one of the scenarios, not to give away too much. So there's all sorts of fun things there, and yeah.
So a couple more questions about TerraPass, if I may then. So it's a cooperative game. What's the player count on it, and what's the average time play on it?
So one player can play it because it's co-op, but if you're playing by yourself, you have to play multiple characters.
Multiple heroes. What's the minimum amount of heroes or investigators, I should say?
I think 2.
Okay.
So you only have to play 2
Okay.
playing solo. But I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And I think it goes up to 6.
That makes me happy. That makes me happy.
6. It might be 5.
That makes me happy.
Now, one of the things I believe that there is easy ways to scale it up further, and that it'll be kind of like a unofficial, hey, if you want a higher player count, here's the few modifications you have to do to make that work.
Nice.
Because it does scale. But I think the box will say either 1 to 5 or 1 to 6.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So TerraPass sounds absolutely fantastic. It sounds really interesting. Moving on, if we could, please. Evil High Priest 2 was something that was discussed. Was it supposed to be Evil High Priest 2nd edition? Was it actually a new version of the game, or can you talk about that?
I can talk about it. I want to make sure I am not sounding mean. Um, so, Evil High Priest is a great game.
Hmm. I
It,
find it fantastic. My
yes,
gaming group loves it a lot. So
it really is. It really is a fun game. And for the type of game it is, worker placement, one of the hardest games to design. I don't know that for sure, but it seems to me that it's one of the hardest games to design. I mean, have you
hard to
played Feast
balance.
for Odin?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're very hard to balance.
yeah,
I have a large collection of worker placement games, all the way from classic easy ones like Lords of Waterdeep, all the way up to Agricola. Misery
yeah.
Farm as they call it sometimes.
I think my first my yeah. Have you played Feast? I'm sure you played Feast for Odin.
Right.
That's a fun one. It's really funny because Sandy never wins that. It's amazing. I play it with my brothers like at Thanksgiving and Sandy, and he always wants to play it because he likes it, but then he's like loses badly, and he's like, how does this happen? And here's something to know about Sandy. He is a good game player. He's not like bad at board games or anything like that. But just because you're a world class game designer, doesn't mean you're a world class game player. Like you win games and you would win tournaments of games all the time. You know, I mean, look, Sandy's fine. I've seen him win lots and lots of games, and he's played lots of war games. He's a grognard, right? So he plays like World in Flames, probably the most complicated board game that exists. If you're not familiar with World in Flames, especially if you couple it with Days of Decision. World of Flames literally takes months to play. If you played it in one sitting, you would probably play it for over a week. Literally, that's how long it takes. It's the entirety of World War II down to extreme detail.
Wow.
And so he'll set that up in his So look up World in Flames. So Days of Decision is before the war and it's politics, and it's two separate games, but you can combine them by playing Days of Decision, and that will kind of affect some of the things that happen in the war. War itself. I mean, I don't know how much you know about World War II, but like an example is Hitler really tried to get Spain, because Spain was fascist. They just finished the Civil War, fascist won, and in the 30s, right? So Hitler tried to get them to join the Axis, right? Just like Mussolini. And that would have made the war very different if he had joined. He ultimately stayed neutral, right? They stayed neutral down in Spain, and that of course helped the Allies, right? And so in World in Flames, you can change history in the sense that you do the Spanish Civil War in the 30s because every year you do stuff, and if things happen, Spain can join the Axis or the Allies or this or that. Just to give you an example, I mean, the level of detail in this game is excruciating. Okay, so I'm not sure why I went on that tangent, but it is a fun game. I've played it once. I have never played a complete game from start to end because it takes forever. But I know Sandy has multiple times over the years. It's a fantastic game. So he'll play any game and he's great at it, but he doesn't always win. So Feast for Odin is a game he somehow never wins, which my brothers and I find hilarious because he's always grumpy at the end. He's like that. Okay, so to get back, I'm very discursive. You probably
That's okay.
So Evil High Priest. Here's the deal. Fantastic game. Good art as far as strict illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
Very poorly done graphic design and layout. So the way the boards are made, the arrangement of the boards, how many there are, you could have do the same game with a different arrangement. You still have to have all the same elements, but just the boards are just so clunky and just there's too many issues with the layout.
It seems like it's a victim of its own self on that aspect because you almost need the multiple boards because that's the selling point of Evil High Priest is every faction has its own faction board which plays differently.
You need the cult board.
Yeah.
But it's not just. I'm not saying like having the cult boards. I'm saying like you have the the track where you can get it's unlocked after the first person gets an elder sign.
Right, and you flip over the board.
You get the things that are like they cost a lot.
Right.
A lot of board over time. Stuff like that. You could have done that different. You could have done it with a smaller board And it's not just the number of boards necessarily, but it's also like even the main board. It's a grid. It's just a grid. And it's like, right? I mean, come on. It could have been a map that has the areas. You could have done so much more with it to make it more interesting and exciting. Okay? So, we got a lot of flack for that on the Kickstarter, and after they were like, the game looks awesome. The card art looks awesome. Graphic layout doesn't. We actually ended up firing the person who was on our staff as the graphic layout person, because it was 2 games in a row where we felt she dropped the ball. And she was a great employee, a great team member in lots of ways. She wasn't a gamer, and I think that was the problem. So
That's
2
unfortunate.
games in a row, she laid out Evil High Priest, and it was like, and then she laid out Planet Apocalypse. And during that Kickstarter, people were like, "Man, this sucks." And it was 2 Kickstarters in a row because we did Evil High Priest and then Planet Apocalypse. Those were 2 back-to-back Kickstarters. So we hired Universal Head down in New Zealand.
Who does a fantastic job. He
He
does.
did a
If you don't know who he is, for people who are watching, if you ever go to Board Game Geek and look for player aids that actually succinctly describe how to play a game, you have probably downloaded some from Universal Head. If you have not and you're viewing this, you need to check out the hard work he does over on his website. Even I'll post a link in the show notes for that.
Yeah, he's great, and he's a great guy. And so we worked with him. We commissioned him to redo Planet Apocalypse graphic design, because the illustration in that game is even better than Evil Head. It's fantastic art. And so it's like, man, we gotta have graphic design that's much better than this, and we got that from Universal Head. And but we didn't. But it was like too late for Evil High Priest. But the fact that 2 games in a row were subpar, we unfortunately hired. So we let her go, and then we hired a guy named Tony Mastrangeli, who's a fantastic graphic designer, and who did all of our games. Well, a lot of our games since then. At a certain point, we promoted him to art director, and then we got a different graphic designer who was also really good. And then we laid off both of them in the recent laying off of everybody. But until then, I mean, he was Tony Mastrangeli. I can't say enough good things about him. He's so good. He was a great team player. He was a great employee. He was a great graphic designer. He was a great art director. He's very knowledgeable about games. He has a great personality. He and I often did not see eye to eye, but that was a huge strength because we would discuss things internally. Sometimes he would agree with me, sometimes I would agree with him, but it was perfect because it was like, you don't want a yes man. You also don't want someone who just like grumbles about every decision management makes. So we eventually promoted him to art director, and then he was kind of pseudo executive, and he was in on some of the executive meetings when meeting between Sandy, Christine, and me. Sandy's the business manager. I'm the project director. Christine is the business manager. Project director. Sandy's the owner. So we always had weekly executive meetings or management meetings, and we would loop in Tony sometimes. And he was just the art director. I mean, not just, but he was the art director over art, and we were talking about like financial and business decisions. But that's how valuable he was as an employee for us, that we included him in that. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to go on. Sorry. We looked out because we were just looking for a graphic designer, and we found him. He also owns Board Game Quest, by the way.
Yes.
Great website.
Yep.
And that's how we found him. He knew he found out we were looking for a thing. He submitted his resume. We interviewed him, and we're like, this guy's awesome. We hired him, and then eventually, he became art director and whatnot. So letting him go was probably the worst of letting my whole team go. Every single person on our team was excellent and amazing. And as Sandy said publicly, it wasn't just saying it publicly. It was 100% true. We had the best team Petersen Games had ever had when we let them go. That's the tragedy. We've had lots of different teams. Like I think I told you maybe before we were recording, Petersen Games has been around for 9 years. Except for me, Lincoln, and Sandy, I don't think anyone lasted more than 4 years. and we almost never fired people. Only once or twice we let people go. Maybe 3 or 4 times. Most people would quit for this or that reason, and almost never because they don't like working for us. They just get a better offer somewhere else because we're a poor company. We can't pay huge salaries. But the bottom line is that we had the best team that we've ever had, and then sadly that's the team we had to let go. And among that best team, we also had Tony. I had to let go. So, okay, so back to Evil High Priest. The problem with Evil High Priest is the graphic design. The idea was not to do a second edition because it's such a good game. It doesn't need a reworking of rules. We want to do the rule book better, like explain the rules better, that's for sure. But the rules themselves are great, right? Only some minor tweaks to the rules. So it's not a proper second edition. We wanted to change the graphic design. Same art, same rules. We want to make it look good as a whole game. And
So like a 1.5 versus a 2.0.
yeah, that might be a way of putting it. And so, and there actually, I think there were some illustrations that Tony was wanting us to redo, but not all of them. I mean, most of the art was fine. It was just the layout aspects, right? Which does entail art too, but it's different from like a card art, you know. So we never got around to it for various reasons, and it also was hard to justify doing it from a business standpoint because we never fully sold the entire first print run. We always had a lingering.
Oh, interesting.
Copies. Yeah, I mean, we made a very big print run. We fulfilled the Kickstarter. Then we had several thousand after that. We sold almost all of it, but we always had a little pile of a few dozen in every region around the world unsold. And so we would do sales in the last few years saying, let's get rid of these boxes collecting dust. You know, and so I could never go to Sandy and Christine and say, hey, let's do a second printing of Evil High Priest with new layout. You know, we have to justify the time to do the layout, the expense to do the layout, and then the expense of printing it and selling it and marketing it and all of that. And it's like, it's like, well, let's sell these 300 copies first. I'm like, oh, they're not really selling. I'm like, well, then why are we doing another printing?
That makes sense, unfortunately.
That's actually why it's been in limbo for a while. And so it's kind of one of those, it's like the other thing to know about Petersen Games, which is probably very obvious, is it's a small family company, and it's all a passion thing for us. I love games. Sandy loves games. All of our team loves games. Well, except for Christine. She was a strictly business manager. She's now no longer with us, but she was not a gamer, which is what you want in a business manager.
Yeah,
right?
you do need a business manager who can be a manager, right?
Everybody else across the board was a gamer. And so the thing is, it's like, so we always wanted to do Evil High Priest again because we love it, but it's hard to justify from a business standpoint. And so that's also part of why it's like I'm the project director, and I am not removing it from my list of projects. But I don't know when we're going to do it because I can't justify it yet.
That makes
now,
sense.
I still think maybe down the road we will be able to, but it's going to be in limbo for some time now.
I really hope
it's only about the graphic design. That's it.
I really hope that something happens for it because I actually appreciate it as a worker placement game because worker placement games are my second favorite. My favorite is actually card games, like Race for the Galaxy and stuff like that.
You should play Bridge. It's a card. It's the greatest card.
I've learned my lesson. I'm definitely going to give Bridge a try one of these days.
Actually, one more thing about the second Evil High Priest. It would also do this. We would also take the expansions and basically put them in the core game.
I can see that, yeah.
Because the expansion, well, particularly the expansion cards. So all the cards that are in the various
yes.
boxes, all of that in the core game. So the unique priests, the unique monsters,
yes.
the unique rooms, chambers, all that stuff, core game. And so there might be an expansion where it's like the core game has, I don't know, 4 cult lords, and then there's a box that has another 8, and that's all it is. Maybe something like that. But essentially, we want to collapse it all because we put all those cool cards in the expansions, and it's like, man, those are really fun. You got to have them, you know.
Yeah.
So that's also. So we would point being is we would kind of change our product the constellation of products for the game. But again, same rules, same basic art. It's just how we package it and the layout, and making sure we can justify it from a business standpoint, which I hope we can one day.
That'd be awesome because, like I said, it's a game I enjoy. But shifting gears a little bit, Petersen Games has done RPG stuff too. I mean, you have the Planet Apocalypse RPG supplement for 5e. You have, of course, the Call of Cthulhu, or not Call of Cthulhu. Sorry, I almost said Call of Cthulhu. That's funny. But
SPCM.
yeah, the Stanley Petersen Cthulhu Mythos for the 5e, and you also did it for Pathfinder and stuff like that. I know you guys said that the RPG adventures were not, they didn't do as well as you thought, but is there anything else that you guys are going to stick with RPGs, or is that something that's going to be on the back burner for a little while, or where's that sitting for you guys?
I can't say too much about it, but let me just say that RPGs will be a big part of Petersen Games in the future,
Oh, cool.
just as they have been recently.
So-
SPCM Adventures did not do well, but we don't think that role playing in general is a bad is not good for our business.
That's
I think
good.
it is.
That's
Right?
good.
I mean, the SPCM. So we've done 5 printings of SPCM
Oh, wow.
for 5th edition,
Wow.
which for a small third-party role-playing publisher, as I understand it, is really, really good. And those 5 print runs of SPCM 5th edition took place in the course of like 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And this is yeah, it's a lot of books. So, I mean, look, Paizo, WotC,
Right.
publishers for really big games. Look, they're doing 5 print runs is nothing.
Right.
But for a third party, it's not even our own rule set. It's Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It's just our own book. 5 print runs is huge.
It is. So was the 5e version much more popular than Pathfinder then, or?
Way more popular. Yeah, way more popular. Pathfinder was big, but we kind of, 10 years ago or something, Pathfinder was bigger than D&D, and then 5th edition was released. Now it's the top dog. Pathfinder 2nd came out, and it is not as big as D&D 5th edition.
No,
as I
that's
understand it.
not.
No. So it's like we kickstarted Pathfinder, SPCM Pathfinder, kind of when I think at the time 5th edition was already out, but it was like pretty new still, and so Pathfinder was still kind of either at the top or pretty close to it. So it met with success, but by the time we did the 5th edition's rules for it, 5th edition was far and away the biggest role playing game again, at least in America.
Right.
And 5 print runs later, we did do a 2nd edition for Pathfinder, released just this year, in fact, this spring. And we're probably not going to do a 2nd print run unless things change dramatically. We've sold it, but it's not like we sold it all in a month or anything like that. We still have some. So, is what it is. So anyway, role-playing games, yes, there's stuff in the future. There's a lot less I can talk about that. Some of it might be D&D related. Some of it might be not D&D related. We're not going to do so much Pathfinder, just because that's not selling well for us. Unfortunately, we like Pathfinder. Pathfinder 1 was the first book we did as Petersen Games. But it's just, sales don't justify it.
That makes sense.
It does, and other game lines, other properties might as well. So we'll see.
Gotcha. So, Cthulhu Wars Duel, I think is awesome. I think it was actually the best new thing that you guys did that was Cthulhu Wars based, but kind of its own little thing. It brought the price down and made a much smaller packaging. It actually made the game start playing fantastically as a 2-player game, because the original rules were not the best for 2-player games, but Duel seemed to like it.
You control 2 factions.
Yeah, that was kind of like...
You control 2 factions, which was kind of idiotic.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I get the point, but no, it just was not smooth enough. So, has Cthulhu Wars Duel been successful for you guys, and what is going to be the next 2 factions?
Fastest selling product we've ever released direct to market.
Wow.
So in a sense, Kickstarter is always the fastest selling, because in 1 month or however long the campaign is, you make like a huge number of sales, right?
Right.
It's a Kickstarter. But when you release direct to market, at least for us as a small indie publisher, especially when you release direct to market direct to customers, because we sold it on our website. And we also sold it through traditional channels. But what I'm saying is that when we released Duel, originally, Cthulhu Wars Duel, fastest selling product on our website ever. So yeah, we reprinted it sooner than we reprinted any other game product, so it's done very well for us. And we did a second one that came out earlier this year, the Extinction, which is a standalone game, but you can mix and match factions. And we have more things for that in the future. Here's the thing I'll say about this. Yes, we have planned out all the various matchups for existing Cthulhu Wars factions. Because that's the easiest low-hanging fruit we can do, right? So the next one is going to be purple and yellow.
Awesome. Very good.
If you are part of our, rabid fan base, and you know that we did the April Fool's thing last year of being
The King and Yell, the giant, big.
That was 2 years ago. Yeah, that's behind me.
Oh wow, that's right. Yeah. That was.
Last year was so. This year was was super tiny. It was the air fresheners in the car.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Last year was a small expansion for Cthulhu Wars Duel. It was 4 unique units. It was the Family Reunion, it was called. And the Family Reunion was 4 units that have never existed in regular Cthulhu Wars. So, here's the deal. And we also cleverly made sure that the art for them was good enough as concept art. So in the future, if we ever wanted to make figures for them to release as a regular Cthulhu Wars expansion, we could. But so far, except for that, it's all been existing Cthulhu Wars factions put into a 2-player format, right? That might be changing going forward. After we do the factions that exist, we are likely to do things for Cthulhu Wars Duel that don't exist in regular Cthulhu Wars.
That would be interesting. That'd be a nice kind of forking of the path there.
Yeah, as in factions designed to be 2-player only, that maybe wouldn't even work in a 4-player setting. So we actually have some being worked on. I can't say too much about it, but let me just say that it's mostly taking independent Great Old Ones and saying, let's make a faction based on this, but it's a whole faction, not just an independent Great Old One. And then it's a faction that really only works in the context of 2 players. And then you match them up.
Nice.
So I've said a lot, and from that you can kind of imagine there's a lot of possible matchups there, which means Cthulhu Wars Duel potentially has a lot of possible things to go.
So one more question about Cthulhu Wars Duel then. Are you guys going to start releasing the maps as separate purchases for people who do enjoy the Cthulhu Wars itself, but want a larger map to use their actual large giantures?
I doubt we'll do that. I think those maps are just Cthulhu Wars Duel maps.
Makes sense.
Unfortunately.
No, it totally makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, maybe we will, but I don't think so. I think it's more like you will see a Abha versus Gatanathoa 2-player faction, first faction. They'll be totally different than the Cthulhu Wars Abha, which is an independent Great Old One.
That's
right?
cool.
It'll be a full faction for Abha with 6 spellbooks and everything, cultists and all that, monsters and all those things. Except, and when I say only works for 2 players, I mean maybe or maybe not. They'll be designed for Cthulhu Wars Duel, which is 2 players, and maybe they could work in a 4-player game, or 3-player, 4-player, 5-player. Which is not to say we're going to go and take those and turn them into full Cthulhu Wars factions. Definitely not going to promise that because we haven't even released the Cthulhu Wars Duel version.
True.
It doesn't have it. The thing is, this is way cheaper. Once you design it, you don't need all the tooling and stuff. You just need standees.
Well, it's fantastic too. It's like a wonderful way for people to get in the game because people, we have families, we have budgets and everything like that. And I always have trouble recommending Cthulhu Wars, the game itself, to another player who I know may not have, the financial budget to afford something large like that. So I can recommend Cthulhu Wars Duel to people because I say it's $40. I mean, that's mass market price right there.
Exactly.
Which is nice.
See, I think it's even 30, but yeah.
Is it 30? No, you're right. 30. Actually, you would be right. You work for the company.
I think it's $29.99. Yeah. Speaking of, so we are in the process of raising our prices a little bit. So
Well,
in
that's
the future, Now it wouldn't be different. Obviously, this doesn't affect Kickstarter stuff, right? So if you paid on Kickstarter, that's the price.
Right.
Unless it comes to shipping, which is a slightly different issue. But you know, the MSRP that we have, that we're selling it like into the retail market once it's released at retail, future products, even if they're reprints of stuff we've already released in the past, are going to have slightly higher prices.
Well, it makes
We just
sense.
have to.
I can't see how you can't. I mean, we know that they just announced on CNN last week that the cost of living went up almost 14% in the past 6 months. And 14% that affects all of us.
Yeah.
I'm rounding up, it was 13.4 or something like that, but that's a huge cost of living cost.
Yeah, we're not raising prices by 14%, I don't think, in most cases, but we are raising prices, you know. So, like, for example, I think factions are probably going to go from like about Cthulhu Wars factions are probably going to go from like $50 to $60.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually is a pretty sizable leap. It's like 20%. Wait,
yeah, no, that'd be 20%. You got the math right.
Yeah, so that's a big leap, because those are our most expensive things. A Cthulhu Wars faction is more expensive than most regular board games we make.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cthulhu Wars core game is more expensive, obviously, but like a Cthulhu Wars faction is way more expensive than making a copy of Duels, right? So, but like, you know, a $20 game of ours might be like $23, $25, you know, $30 games might be 35. So they're all going to be a little bit different, because we just have to. Our costs are higher. It's unfortunately what's going on in the world.
Right.
But obviously this wouldn't affect prices for pre-orders, which includes Kickstarters, but also retailers who have already put in their pre-order and made a down payment, or even if they haven't, if it's like we've agreed with that distributor, they are ordering this amount of product for this price, they get that price.
Right.
This is for future sales.
Well, it's a signed contract too, so it's not, you know, it makes sense.
Exactly. So we're not changing any of that. But it's like once Onslaught 4, for example, is on the market, there will be higher prices for all these items than the Kickstarter and so forth. So we have to. Forgot what led to that question. We were talking about Duels.
Yeah, we're talking about Duels, and
it's a $30 game,
yeah.
and that Duel might stay the same at 30. Actually, it's possible we'll raise it to 35, but I don't think we have yet. So
I think it's a fantastic deal. I mean, I don't know why I said 40. Apparently my brain is just in another time zone today. I'm allowed to have those kind of days, right? So, right. But no, 30 is a fantastic price for, I mean, good artwork and good components. It's not like you have, you know, monopoly quality, you know, thin paper stuff. It's good quality stuff. So, I mean, it's a good recommendation.
And you can play the heck out of it. It has so much replayability because it's Cthulhu Wars.
Right.
It has tons of replayability. You know?
Right. And once you guys release the third box, you're looking at $90 out of your own pocket for 6 factions to play as a 2-player game. What's the replay value out of that? I mean, nowadays, what can you get looking at our modern hobby for $90 with that much variety? I mean, board games are $100. I mean, we mentioned Feast of Odin before. How much is that? $99?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a 4-player game. So, I mean, just using as an example.
Sandy, I've heard backers say this, and I agree with them. Sandy packs a lot of gameplay in his games, and by that it's like oh, maybe this is like Hyperspace. It's a $70 game or something like that, but it's like so much stuff in there, so much gameplay value in there. People playing that on TTS and stuff. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of gameplay. We sell games that are very replayable.
Right. So earlier you mentioned the miniatures for Cthulhu Wars and the big miniatures, and you know, Petersen Games has kind of had that be the bread and butter for a while. You had the Gods War, giant miniatures, Cthulhu Wars, giant miniatures. You had Planet Apocalypse, giant miniatures, but you also had, those are the games that have kind of struggled to deliver. But you've also had games that didn't do the giant miniatures. You had Evil High Priest, which I think was only like 2 months late when things were all said and done. The gigantic miniatures. So you had Evil High Priest, when everything was all said and done, was only like 2 months late. You had a couple of the games that came out really fairly quickly, just for the simple fact that they didn't have the giant miniatures. Have you guys thought about walking away from that for a while? Just kind of doing things a little more reasonable sized?
Yes.
My next question for you is, I enjoy Cthulhu Wars a lot, but personally, I kind of actually prefer the Gods War a little bit better. Between the two games, it's my slightly more favorite game. I know it was never quite as successful for you guys as Cthulhu Wars was. That's understandable because, Cthulhu Wars has a lot more history behind it and everything like that. I know you guys said you're pretty much done with the Gods War after the next, or this Kickstarter that was already done. Have you guys thought about maybe revisiting the game in a more smaller version, see if that can help make it have a larger market presence?
I would say it's unlikely, unfortunately, and it's going to have to be in conjunction with Chaosium. So that's a licensed game.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Chaosium owns Glorantha. It's an IP. Yeah. So Glorantha, that's the world of the RuneQuest role playing.
Right. RuneQuest, which is a classic for people who don't know, is a game from the 70s, 80s. It was a little bit more of a grittier RPG and a little bit more of a much more crunchy RPG system. Much more influenced by classic first edition Dungeons and Dragons with I think it was percentile based, wasn't it?
It was percentile.
Yeah, percentile based.
It's and the universe of Glorantha is a lot more based on myth, like real mythology, rather than Tolkien, like D&D.
Right.
Right. Tolkien is this. I'm not saying D&D is just Lord of the Rings, but it
is.
It's
it
so
is.
heavily influenced. Right. But anyway, and D&D slash Lord of the Rings has kind of colored a lot of what fantasy is in the last few decades in terms of gaming, and Glorantha is a very different type of thing, you know. So anyway, Glorantha is a whole awesome universe. It's the greatest invented universe ever, in my opinion. Sandy
It's
did a
very
lot.
unique.
It's very unique.
Extremely unique.
Yeah, and if you don't have to know anything about it to enjoy the game, The Gods War. But if you do know Glorantha, you can see how the theme is married really well. And that's why it plays so different. I mean, there's a lot of the rules and mechanics are very, very similar from Cthulhu Wars, and yet the game experience is very different.
It is.
And that's the theme is married so well, and the themes of Cthulhu and Glorantha are just not the same.
Right.
And so they do play differently, you know? And that's like, to go back to role-playing, Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest are the same basic role-playing system. They're what's called basic role-playing by Chaosium. They have some differences and variations, but it's the same general rule set. And yet, if you play RuneQuest and then you play Call of Cthulhu, the experiences are night and day. It's absolutely different. Same with Cthulhu Wars and the Gods War.
Right.
Here's what I would say. If we are wrong, and by that I mean when we release the Gods War to retail, it's a bigger hit than we expect. And this could happen. We are in the process of changing a lot of things about us. You know, it wasn't like we're going to lay off 70% of our staff and then like do nothing. I mean, we have a lot of plans and things because we eventually will be growing our team again, and so forth. And so there's a lot of things we're doing, and that could include being better at marketing and selling games that are released to the public. And let's say we do that, and the Gods War makes a bigger splash this time around. Well, maybe we'll rethink it. But as of right now, the first Kickstarter was actually a money loser.
Yes, I know. I've heard that story.
The second Kickstarter was not hugely profitable, and we didn't have a much bigger audience either.
Right.
That's in big, expensive games, volume is necessary.
Right.
It just is. Because the costs are too high to tool and to do all this stuff.
So. To me, I don't know. I enjoy the Gods War a lot. If I had like a wish list for the Gods War, I could run down a quick wish list of what I'd love to have. I would love to have seen Chaos to be a neutral AI controlled faction, where you can either play two ways, where it's just in the game as a faction itself, or it's a game where the other players are playing against it. That was always one thing I would love to have seen added to the game.
Like teams.
Like
That's a cool idea.
Like whereas all the players just versus Chaos itself, and Chaos.
Yeah, not teams.
Right. I always thought that'd be really, because it would fit the theme more, because Chaos is literally against everybody in the mythos of it. So I thought that would always be fantastic.
Well, here's I don't know how much you know about Glorantha. I'll try to not really go deep diving into it, but here's what Sandy originally wanted. So in Gloranthan history, you have the before time. That's called the God time.
Right.
And that's subdivided into lots of things too, but there's the God time generally. And the God's War takes place during the God's time. Then after the God time, there's the first age, then the second age, then the third age, and then the Hero Wars, right? That's the future. So basically everybody plays in like the year 1620, which is like the end of the third age. That's when you role play. Okay, you're like always in that year, kind of. Okay, so the first age has a huge thing called the Gabaji Wars, and where there's two sides. Well, it's actually super complicated, but at base there's two sides. There's Arkit and Nisalor, and there's also Gabaji, which is both of them, but neither of them. Well, mostly Nisalor. Point is, he was going to make a two-player game, first age game. So the God's War was the God time. Then Sandy was going to make a two-player game, completely different game, based on first stage Glorantha. Then he was going to make a game called the Age of Empires, kind of calling that.
Interesting.
For the second age, because in the second age of Glorantha there was a lot of empires. So there was going to, and it was going to be a co-op game, whereas everybody against the universe, because the universe destroyed at the end of the second age, the universe, so to speak, the gods,
Right.
destroyed empires,
Right.
and dragons or whatever. Then so it was going to be a two-player game, then a co-op game, and then the third game was either going to be a Hero Wars game, so actually skipping over the third age and going into the future of the Hero Wars, or it was going to be the game of Luck and Death, which has to do with Belantar, or, well, has to do with the Holy Land, the Holy Country in Glorantha. Anyway, so possibly that, or, he didn't have that fully thought out, but he was like, I know what the first age is going to be. It's a two-player game. I know what the second age is going to be. Then he had plans for it. So he kind of wanted to take Glorantha and, like, every major age of the universe do a game based around it. But because God's War was not as successful as it was, that whole thing was scrapped. He never did any of those games.
That's unfortunate, because it seems to me like it could have been awesome. Because, like I said, I enjoy it. One of the things I love about it is the fact that the map changes depending on the status of the board. I really love the forced cooperation that the players have to do for the Great Compromise. It's such a unique experience for gameplays. It forces people to do the prisoner's dilemma, where it's like, how much power do I give to stop chaos or not? So I always thought that was like an interesting inclusion for a game. It was like, it kind of to me added more to
the chaos rift, and then the council is those two things more than anything are why it's so different from Cthulhu Wars.
right.
But also many other reasons. But yeah, it's its own experience. I agree. I love the God's War a lot. I think I slightly favor Cthulhu Wars. But anyone who's played both, they always have an opinion. One is always, like Chris Lemon, Sandy's best friend, likes God's War a little more. Of course, he is a major Glorantha fan, so maybe that colors his assessment. But he likes both games.
Talking about things, let's kind of shift gears here and talk about things I think that people who are going to watch this video really want to know about, and that's the Kickstarter and the status of all the Kickstarters right now. Cthulhu Wars should be sometime in the next month or two, we hope, hitting the water. That's the assumption from everybody, and that's what we're really, really hoping for, right? For Onslaught 4 to hit the water.
I'm literally right now waiting for pictures and videos of the assembly into boxes and the shrink wrapping and like the final stuff where you put stuff into the SKU boxes and put them on pallets. I don't have that yet from the factory. I actually emailed them yesterday following up, and they're like, oh, we should have that to you next week. That said, some of the languages are already done. So we're not going to get... So English is last because it's the biggest.
Right.
So like Russia's wrapped up, Chinese is wrapped up, French is wrapped up, German is in the process of wrapping up, and then English is last because that's the biggest. So we will get pictures of some of that soon. And they're arranging freight for some of those languages I just mentioned. The English, the largest batch of stuff, which is English, the freight arrangements haven't yet been made because it's just not finished wrapping up all the SKUs and all of that.
Right.
So I'm going to get photo and videos of that happening, which I'm eager to release. And then when the freight arrangements have been made, and they are, first, before that happens, we'll know the dates. Like, once they've been arranged, we'll know the date for pickup. I can announce that. Right now, it's looking like August 29th. But
that'd be awesome.
If you hold me to that, it could be after that.
That's life.
That freight arrangements always change.
Right.
Right? And so, or take time. Especially today, nowadays, it takes longer and longer to organize stuff in the world of shipping. So, but the ready date from the factory is August 29th, as in they're ready for the containers to be picked up on that date. But it may happen in early September, realistically.
That could
Now,
happen.
once that happens, we're also going to have videos and footage of that, and we're going to release that in an update, and there'll be tracking for the vessels across the world. Those are all the most important things, I guess, logistically, that we're really excited about. So the next few weeks, there's going to be a lot of cool updates surrounding that.
That'll be awesome. So what's next in the queue?
What Kickstarter is next?
Yeah. What Kickstarter is next in the queue? I know you guys were talking basically between Hyperspace and Planet Apocalypse 2. Have you guys been able to figure out which one's going to be next yet?
It's almost certainly going to be Hyperspace, but that's why I said almost. Hyperspace is the oldest outstanding Kickstarter, so that's a problem. It's really been through the ringer in terms of, I wonder where that phrase comes from. Been through the ringer. But it really has in terms of factories, change factories. It's had very mega issues with tooling, which are just awful because the guys doing the tooling, the factory is like, they did Awaken Realm stuff. They're amazing. I don't want to go too much long on this, but yeah, Hyperspace is almost certainly next. We think it'll be a big hit. We hope it is. And we have a lot of stuff beyond Hyperspace related to that IP. So we think Hyperspace will be the third big IP for us.
I think you might be right.
Yeah. Cthulhu Wars, Planet Apocalypse, and then Hyperspace.
So I had the good fortune of actually playing your guys' prototype copy of Hyperspace, and I enjoyed it a lot. I actually put a full video series on it. So, I mean...
And it only improved after that prototype.
Because that prototype is, what, 2 years old now? 2.5 years old now? So...
It greatly improved after that.
Yeah, so...
But yeah, it was already improved by the time of the Kickstarter, I'm pretty sure. Like, that happened before the Kickstarter. And then... that will... But anyway, what I'm saying is, we have other games, and without saying too much, we have other things that are not the Hyperspace game for that universe. So it's a whole universe that we are going to exploit as much as we can.
Good.
Assuming Hyperspace is a hit, which we think it is.
As somebody who plays space sim games, I think it's, from what I played, it was very enjoyable. And I think, like I said, you guys making the production phase as part of the game was like a wonderful design decision, which I think is make a huge difference for a lot of people. Getting games like that normally take 4 to 5 hours, played in half the time.
I know. Like Cthulhu Wars, take a game that should take a long time, compress it, get all the epic experience of that kind of strategy compressed into, Sandy's a master of that.
Yep. So I know your time's very valuable. I just want to go and wrap things up here by going a little bit rapid fire and going and cover the future Kickstarters are still in the line. Because like I said, I know there's other things that people are really interested in. Just taking a one at a time and just quick discussion about every single one of them. Cthulhu Wars, we've already had a chance to talk about it really nicely, and I appreciate everything you talked about. Can you talk about any possible future maps or any other factions that we can talk about that may be coming out with a quick 1 or 2 minute overview of what's coming out for Cthulhu Wars in the future?
Cthulhu Wars?
Yeah. Any maps or any factions you can talk about?
Not really. There's nothing, because we're not sure if we're going to do much more with Cthulhu Wars.
Wasn't there a rumored map that was talked about too, or did that never happen?
Yeah, so there is, I can say in confidence, there's at least one expansion forthcoming, but it's not a map.
Okay.
And because this was the final onslaught, meaning the final Kickstarter, now maybe we'll change that, but there's no way we're going to Kickstarter until we've shipped virtually all of the ones we have outstanding. So maybe if we've shipped all but one, we might do a Kickstarter project, I don't know. But most likely right now, we can't justify doing a Kickstarter. By the way, to go back to something you said a while ago, the P500, we don't want, generally speaking, to offer pre-orders right now, even if it's not a Kickstarter.
Right.
We feel like we unfortunately, we just can't justify. I think our customer base won't accept that right now because of all the outstanding Kickstarters, and we respect that. So basically, until we've delivered a few more things, we don't want to do pre-order stuff, which includes Kickstarters. There might be one exception to that, But generally speaking, that's going to be our rule of thumb. So we have one. So I was saying was this is our final Kickstarter for Cthulhu Wars. So that being the case, we're probably not going to be able to finance a suite of expansions ever again for Cthulhu Wars.
Right.
So we'll do one at a time. But right now, Sandy is focused on the Duels line and other games, and we don't really have active plans for anything for Cthulhu Wars. Again, not including Duels.
Right.
But regular Cthulhu, we have no plans for anything beyond this one expansion that is a secret. But there is that map of Carcosa that is partially designed, and I won't say never, but it is not actively being worked on as a project.
Gotcha. So next up, hyperspace. Where, if hyperspace was next in a queue right now, let's just say that'd be Cthulhu Wars had delivered. You guys had gotten to that point. Is hyperspace at the point where, barring the couple of the miniatures that were still having struggles, barring those miniatures, is it ready for production? Is everything else done for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Can't wait to do it. It's going to be awesome.
And have you guys thought about possibly doing a more retail version of the game that would be like maybe like a 4-player version of the game with like 6 factions in the box type of situation?
I mean, we have to release it first.
Right.
So probably not, but I wouldn't say never. So as an IP, we have a lot of plans, like I said, for hyperspace, but we got to release the first game.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Where does Eternal Adversary sit?
It's in tooling hell, basically.
Right.
And I know people like to say, why do our games take longer to tool than others? Well, it's hard to answer that, actually. But without answering it and just completely setting that aside, Eternal Adversary is in tooling hell, and once it's out of tooling hell, it'll be pretty quick to finish.
So everything else is pretty much done with it, the artwork, the layout, and everything?
Yep, 100%.
Because I know about me, Eternal Adversary is the only project that you guys put out that I actually didn't back. I'm actually a backer of everything else you guys have. So I'm not a backer of it, so I can't remember the exact time. But I know about a year ago, you guys actually put out images showing the actual, were they early prototypes from the miniatures or something like that, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Myself right here.
Yeah. So those are the, what do they call those? Waxes, or what do they call those?
Yeah, red wax.
Red wax.
Yeah. So this is actually a fan-made creature. There was like a pledge level where you got to design a creature,
Very cool.
and this is that one,
Very cool.
or one of them. But yeah, this guy's my favorite.
Yeah, that's the one I remember seeing. That the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, that is one I want to paint. I would love to be painting that one.
The guy's hanging off.
Yep. That is an amazing, I'd actually like to use that in like a D&D campaign too. So that'd just be awesome just to plunk that one on the tabletop during an RPG session. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, we Eternal Adversary is, it's in, to borrow terminology from the movie industry, it's in development hell, but tooling hell, right? I guess I already said that. You know what I mean? Like, development hell for movies is like the studio has greenlit it, and yet they're still changing the script or something.
Right.
For this, it's not like that. It's more like the tooling thing is there are challenges with tooling.
Yes. So God's War expansion, which covers the 3 God factions. How is that completely done? Is that just at the point where you just need to do the 3D models, or is there still work that needs to be done on, or how is that sitting?
Same. All of them are pretty much the same. They're ready to go to manufacturing. It's logistics and similar factors, really.
Gotcha. And Dinosaur 1944 and the final one, of course, Planet Apocalypse. Once the tooling issues are done, it's pretty much, those are all games at the point where you can just hit print, the layout's done, the artwork's done, and everything?
Layout and artwork's done. Yep.
Gotcha. Have you ever thought about possibly going to the Kickstarter for each individual one? Because I know one of the complaints that you probably hear enough, and you're probably sick of hearing about it, is how the updates are pretty much cookie cutter across all the projects. And I understand why you're doing it, because they're basically all in the same circumstance. Have you ever thought about maybe just taking like some finished artwork or finished parts and like posting those as individual updates for each project? Like, for example, going to Planet Apocalypse and showing, hey, this is one of the heroes, and this is, we've completed this hero. This is their, you know, this is what they look like, and this is a little bit of how they're going to play. Kind of letting everybody reaffirm what has been done and what's complete, to kind of give everybody kind of a positive reinforcement.
Yeah, that actually isn't a bad idea. I think that would probably just be a repeat, because I think during the campaigns, during active campaigns, we usually kind of showed off the final art, final miniature, what they do, give a little like design diary from Sandy of how they worked and stuff. And so until we have, you know, tooling picks and stuff like that, there's not really, now showing that again, I think there's value there because people forgot or missed it or this or that. So actually that's a good idea. I will say that we're recently partnering with a professional communicator, I guess might be the way to put it.
Public relations person.
No, not exactly, but yes. And he is helping us craft our like our comms, our communications.
Right.
He's developed a comms plan. I don't even know if he wants us to say that this is the case or just, but it doesn't matter. We are so anyway, starting this coming Monday, in fact, probably before this video is up on YouTube.
This video should be up on the 15th, if that helps you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 15th is.
So today is the 12th, so in 3 days. So
okay. So
Monday.
The day this goes live, we should have a new update on Cthulhu Wars, and the update is going to be pretty comprehensive. And one of the things it's going to say is our commitment to do Monday updates for Cthulhu Wars.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Every Monday.
Very nice.
So yeah. It should be, communication should be much improved. We were talking about the hats I wear at this company earlier. Didn't even mention them all. One of them would be general communicator and face of the company. Yes, Sandy is the face of the company in a major sense. He's the designer, he's the owner, and he's the famous personality. I write the Kickstarter updates. I am the main person interacting with people online publicly for things related to our projects and games. And I'm not great at that, I don't think. But I'm the one doing it because no one else ever wanted to do it or had the time. It's like, well, I do everything, so I'll do this too. That's kind of how it happened. And I'm always very busy, and I never really had like a strategy for it. It was just like, here's my rules for updates. Never deceive. If you have something you don't want to say, don't say it. So there's certainly times where it's like, I didn't want to say this to the backers, so I don't say it. That might sound bad. Some backers might be like, no, you have to tell us everything. It's like, no, we're a business. We often cannot tell you things. And it's not because we're, devious or something. It's like sometimes you can't tell somebody something, right?
Right.
It's outside your business. It's just how it is. So in that case, rather than obfuscate, my plan was to say nothing, right? And so my rules were always tell the truth as much as possible. If you don't have something to say, don't say it, and try not to be too optimistic because I'm an optimist by nature. So I'm always like, this is when it's going to be ready, because that's what the factor tells me. And yet, even when I am pulling back my optimism, I needed to be even more pessimistic. So now it's like, I don't even want to say anything about the timeline. But like I said, I have a professional who understands all of this way better than me, who's helping me structure and plan out updates, and that's going to start next week.
Awesome. I'm sure everybody's going to be really happy to hear that. So I appreciate your time. I thank you very much for taking time to talk to me, and it's been a wonderful experience. I know a lot of people don't see this, but this has actually been a 6-hour day for us because we actually had a lot of conversations before and during, and and it's been wonderful, doing all this stuff because we actually talked about a lot of stuff that would have been great if we could have recorded because it would have been nice, but we didn't get to, and we got what we did get, which was absolutely fantastic. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Other than, hey, have me on again, and you should uh, interview me and Sandy together.
I think that'd be a fantastic idea. I actually would
And
love to do that.
sometimes play off each other in fun ways.
That'd be
Sandy
awesome.
is also a great person to interview just by himself because he's a fountain of amazing things.
I think it'd be awesome to have you both on at the same time. So,
Yeah.
so
All right.
how can people meet you and how can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, this is very important. Discord. We have a Discord channel, Petersen Games Discord channel. I will give Michael the link to join it if you're not part of it. But going forward, that's going to be our official forum for interacting with the public.
Perfect. And I'll put that link down in the show notes for anybody to click and join. And if anybody's not familiar, Discord is supremely easy to use. It's a standard chat engine. Click in, join, and join the conversation. Join the talks. You have multiple different chat channels. A general chat. You have a Q&A chat section. You have a section where people can show off painting and stuff like that. So it's a very active community. I think a lot of people enjoy checking it out.
And I'm about to add a new Kickstarter section where we're going to put all things Kickstarter.
Awesome. Well, again, I thank you very much for your time, and this has been very enjoyable. And thank you very much, Arthur.
Thanks, Michael.
Take care.